Chapter 2620, I heard your name is Leng Ruoxue. 2. The captain of the Imperial Guards had already treated Leng Ruoxue as a mentally ill patient. Hence, other than the momentary anger he felt when he first heard her words, the captain of the Imperial Guards quickly calmed down and consoled himself. Don't be calculative with a patient, it would only lower your own intelligence. At the same time, the captain's gaze towards Leng Ruoxue had an additional trace of sympathy, which made Leng Ruoxue confused. However, Leng Ruoxue did not want to think too much about it. She only asked indifferently, can we enter the city? This, I can't. If these mental patients were allowed into the city, wouldn't the city be turned upside down by them? It had to be said that from a certain aspect, the guard captain's intuition was quite accurate. He deeply felt that if these people in front of him really entered the city, nothing good would come out of it, because these people did not look like people who would stay put. The Leng clan was in a period of turmoil, so it was safer to leave these dangerous people outside. However, the captain of the guards did not know how to refuse these fiendish men from entering the city. He did not have the same authority as the one who had been beaten up. If he really caused any trouble because of this, he would undoubtedly be the one to be blamed. After hesitating for a long time, the guard captain's expression turned awkward, not knowing what to say. At this moment, someone from the Leng clan, who had been beaten up, finally recovered a little. After consuming a healing pill, he jumped up and down again. Then, he pointed at Leng Ruoxue and the others' noses and shouted, the proud cold city refuses to let you in, so get out of here immediately. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite. If one didn't look at his body that was trembling like a leaf in the cold wind, his voice would still be quite imposing. However, with his trembling body and swollen pig face, he looked as funny as he could be. Furthermore, even though his voice was rather loud, his heart was trembling with fear. Otherwise, with his personality, how could he possibly let Leng Ruoxue and the others off? However, at this moment, he hoped that he could send these gods of plagues away as soon as possible. Otherwise, his life would definitely end in the hands of these evil demons. Some people were just like that. They were born to bully the weak and fear the strong. They would only be more honest after being beaten up. However, the person in front of her was honest, but he still held a trace of hope in his heart. He was not honest enough, at least, that was what Leng Ruoxue thought. Otherwise, the other party would not have dared to point at their noses and tell them to get lost. Get lost? Why don't you get lost and watch me? After Leng Ruoxue heard this, she smiled faintly. Then, she quickly kicked someone from the Leng clan. The Leng clan member, who had just regained his strength but was still in shock, was kicked to the city wall by Leng Ruoxue like a ball. He left a human-shaped hole in the wall and rolled into the city. This scene caused everyone present to be dumbstruck once again. The members of the Luo family were still fine. They knew that their master was very powerful, so they were still very calm in the face of such a scene. However, the guards of the Leng family were dumbfounded. How could this be possible? As the city guards, they knew very well how strong the city walls were. However, a human-shaped hole had been made on the extremely strong walls by a weak woman. It was unbelievable and illogical. However, this was obviously not the end. In the next minute, everyone present heard another crack. Kacha! The sound of something breaking could be heard. Then, the sturdy city wall slowly fell down in front of everyone. The guards of the Leng family were petrified when they saw this even more terrifying scene. Thanks, since the proud cold city doesn't welcome us, we won't be annoying. Let's go. After doing all this, Leng Ruoxue clapped her hands as a gesture and ignored the petrified Leng family guards. She turned to the Luo family members and said, when the Luo family members heard this, they could not help but feel embarrassed. Today, they had finally witnessed their master's power. Was it appropriate to just leave like this after breaking their defense? However, they could not disobey their master's orders. Hence, everyone from the Luo family followed Leng Ruoxue's lead stiffly. Just as they were about to leave, an extremely powerful force attacked them from behind. A voice was heard at the same time, "Who are you? How dare you cause trouble in the Leng clan? Leng Ruoxue turned around unhurriedly. With a light wave of her hand, she smacked away the other party's chi force. She then squinted her beautiful eyes and looked at the person who had arrived. What's wrong? We haven't seen each other for a few years and you're pretending to be strangers now. Her words were definitely provocative, and after the other party heard his words, he gritted his teeth in anger. Can't you be more normal when you come back to the Leng family? The person who spoke was Leng Shaoqing, one of the greatest ancestors of the Leng clan. He had never thought that the person who came to cause trouble in the proud cold city would be Leng Ruoxue, the god of killing. When he saw Leng Ruoxue, he was both happy and troubled. He was happy that the Leng clan had gained a powerful support, but the troubled one was that the person in front of him did not treat him as a member of the Leng clan. To put it bluntly, she was not an obedient descendant, and would not treat him with the respect of an ancestor. By normal, he meant that Leng Ruoxue could have taken the normal route. There was no need for her to destroy the Leng clan's city wall as soon as she returned. It was a critical time. If the enemy took the opportunity to attack the proud cold city, it would not be good news for the Leng clan. I wanted to come back normally, but someone in the Leng family wouldn't let me. After hearing Leng Xiaoqing's words, Leng Ruoxue smiled faintly. What's going on? Leng Xiaoqing's eyes were like daggers as she asked the petrified guard captain. Hearing Leng Xiaoqing's reprimand, the captain of the royal guards suddenly came to his senses. He then looked at Leng Shaoqing with a respectful expression and said, Old ancestor, it was young Master Kun who said that they had a large number of people and their identities were unknown, so he refused to let them enter the city. What the guard captain was thinking was that he couldn't take the blame for young Master Kun. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to withstand the anger of the old ancestor. More importantly, he didn't expect the old ancestor to know this goddess of killing. In that case, wasn't it a big mistake to stop her from entering the city? When he thought of this, he was so nervous that his little heart started to beat wildly. Leng Yichun. Get Leng Yichun to come out. The moment Leng Shaoqing heard that it was Leng Yichun's doing that had angered this little girl, he immediately ordered in a rage. Originally, he had wanted to build a good relationship with this girl, but who knew that the Leng family would always have such blind things to annoy her. This fact made him angry and annoyed. Not long later, Leng Yichun, who was covered in dirt and bruises, was brought in. The moment he saw Leng Shaoqing, he immediately knelt on the ground and strongly requested old Grand Madam to seek justice for him. He said that he was being bullied. When Leng Shaoqing heard this, he was so angry that he kicked him again. With such a brainless descendant, he really had no idea how many of his hair had turned white from worry. On the other hand, Leng Yichun, who was kicked, had a look of disbelief and bewilderment on his face. This made him, who had always thought that he was pampered in front of the old ancestor, extremely puzzled. Chapter 26-21, I heard your name is Leng Ruoxue. 3. Old Grand Madam, Leng Yichun was dumbfounded. Never in his dreams would he have thought that the old ancestor would actually help an outsider. Is this how you guard the city gate? The Leng family dares to refuse to enter the city. Leng Xiaoqing's eyes were filled with rage as he roared at Leng Yi. The Leng family? Who was it? I've never refused the Leng family's entry into the city. Leng Yichun said with an aggrieved expression. Sob. How would he dare to reject the Leng family from entering the city? Wasn't this courting death? Especially at such a sensitive time, if the Leng family really filed a complaint against him, his good days in the Leng family would be over. Towards this, Leng Yichun had thought it through quite clearly. He knew that it was okay for him to bully outsiders. At least, outsiders could not complain to the old ancestor. However, he could not bully his own family as he pleased. Otherwise, it would not be good for him to offend his own family. Girl, you never said you were a member of the Leng family? Looking at the aggrieved Leng Yichun, Leng Shaoqing believed that he wouldn't dare to lie. This matter could be a misunderstanding. In his opinion, it was fine as long as this matter was not intentional. Hence, he turned to Leng Ruoxue. You didn't say that you're from the Leng family, so you're going to be refused to enter the city because of the large number of people? Although I didn't say who I was, my subordinates said that they were from the Luo family, so they were also refused to enter the city. Leng Ruoxue said nonchalantly. Yes. I told you that we are from the Luo family, but this young Master Kun doesn't believe me. He even looks like he doesn't like our Luo family at all, as if he looks down on us. I wonder if the Leng family wants to end their alliance now. The grand elder of the Luo family continued Leng Ruoxue's sentence. Leng Yichun. Leng Xiaqing's face darkened when he heard this. However, Leng Yichun still tried to defend himself and quickly said, Ancestor, it's a critical time now. They said they were from the Luo family, but they didn't show any solid evidence. How can I believe them? You said that you wouldn't believe that we're from the Luo family, so what does it matter if we can't produce any evidence? In short, even after we said that we are from the Luo family, your Leng family still chose to refuse our alliance. May I ask the ancestor of the Leng family, does the Leng family want to end our alliance with the Luo family? After the grand elder of the Luo family heard Leng Yichun's explanation, he asked again. Grand elder Luo, this is all a misunderstanding. I apologize to the Luo family on behalf of the Leng family. Please be magnanimous and don't lower yourself to the same level as this stupid pig. Leng Xiaoqing replied with a sincere tone. Seeing that the Leng family's ancestor, who was the most senior in the family, had apologized to him in a humble manner, the grand elder of the Luo family also knew when to stop. After all, the Leng family and his master still had a blood relationship, so he did not want to make things difficult for the Leng family. The matter of Leng Ruoxue's refusal to enter the city was temporarily forgotten under the Leng clan's intentional fawning. After being personally welcomed into the Leng family's main residence by Leng Xiaoqing, Leng Ruoxue and the rest moved into the falling snow garden that they had once stayed in. Leng Xiaoqing, who was familiar with Leng Ruoxue's personality, similarly did not arrange for anyone to serve them. Leng Ruoxue did not mind this, but even if she did not mind, it did not mean that no one would come to cause trouble. The person who was looking for trouble was Leng Yichun, who had just been severely scolded by the Leng family's old ancestor. Although Leng Yichun was scolded, he did not receive any other punishment. Hence, the self-righteous him thought that the other party's position in old Grand Madam's heart was not as high as his. Hence, he naturally came over to show off. In addition, he knew that Leng Ruoxue was his junior, so the fear he had towards Leng Ruoxue and the rest naturally disappeared. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue and the mother parasol tree were sitting in the garden. The mother parasol tree felt that Leng Jian's scenery was really not bad and was pulling Leng Ruoxue along to admire it with her. When she saw Leng Yichun who suddenly appeared in front of them, the mother parasol tree raised her brows and asked indifferently, "Is there something?" Leng Ruoxue did not even look at Leng Yichun. Looking at the mother parasol tree, Leng Yichun's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. He was slightly regretful that he did not notice the existence of this great beauty at the city gate earlier. As for Leng Ruoxue, even though she was also beautiful, she had obviously angered him. Hence, he was not interested in her. At this moment, he was here to make Leng Ruoxue feel uncomfortable. Hence, he could only give the mother parasol tree the cold shoulder for now. Then, he turned to look at Leng Ruoxue and said arrogantly, "I heard you're Leng Ruoxue." "Yes, I am." Leng Ruoxue nodded. "How audacious. Why don't you kneel when you see your elders?" Suddenly, Leng Yichun let out a loud roar. His voice was so loud that it even startled a group of beautiful ornamental birds in the garden. Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue blinked her eyes and asked the mother parasol tree on purpose, "Senior, are there any elders here?" "I don't know. Who knows how the Leng family's seniority is ranked?" The mother parasol tree held back her laughter and said in agreement. At the same time, she mourned for this Leng Yichun in front of her for 3 minutes. This was really a case of forcing one's way into hell when there was no door to heaven. From what she knew, Leng Ruoxue was very famous in the Leng clan and was known as the god of slaughter. Hence, she could not understand. Could it be that this fellow in front of her had never heard of Leng Ruoxue's fearsome reputation? He had already annoyed the little girl before, and now he still dared to come and find trouble with her. How bold was this person? Thanks actually, it wasn't that Leng Yichun had not heard of Leng Ruoxiu's great name. It was just that when Leng Ruoxiu was displaying her divine might in the Leng family, Leng Yichun happened to not be at home. Hence, even though he knew of her existence, he had not personally experienced those things. Hence, he still felt that the Leng Ruoxiu's reputation was definitely not as good as the rumors. Moreover, even though he had offended Leng Ruoxiu at the city gate, the old grand madam did not do anything to him. From this, it could be seen that Leng Ruoxiu's status in the Leng family was not that high. With this thought in mind, he was even more fearless. Therefore, he, who didn't learn his lesson, had just been taught a lesson and now he was looking for a beating again. Your elder. Leng Yichun was listening to the conversation between Leng Ruoxiu and the mother parasol tree. Seeing that the two of them had obviously ignored him, he reminded them angrily and brought the mother parasol tree along. My surname isn't Leng. The mother parasol tree said with a smile. May I ask which sect are you from? Leng Ruoxiu asked curiously. I'm Woody's uncle, so you guys have to call me uncle too. The moment he heard this, Leng Yichun immediately put on the airs of an elder and raised his head to look at Leng Ruoxiu in a show of force. Uncle? Are you dreaming? Even if you want to acknowledge your family, you don't have to do this. The mother parasol tree laughed evilly. After she finished speaking, she immediately lifted Leng Yichun up as though she was lifting a little chick. Leng Yichun was so frightened that he immediately cried out, "What are you doing? Quickly put me down." Why were women so rough these days? Leng Yichun was incomparably indignant. Being lifted up like this was a complete disgrace to his manliness. Hence, he was instantly enraged. However, the mother parasol tree did not give him the chance to show off his might. With a gentle wave of her arm, Leng Yichun immediately turned into a shooting star and was thrown out. When they heard the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground in the distance, the two of them calmly continued to drink tea, chat, and enjoy the scenery. Ha ha ha. Little sister, long time no see. At this moment, Leng Shuang's forthright laughter rang in Leng Ruoxiu and the mother parasol tree's ears. The two of them looked up and saw Leng Shuang and Leng Woody walking in from outside. Sister, have you seen enough? Leng Ruoxiu glanced at the mother and son, who seemed to be eager to see the world in chaos, and smiled. Hee hee. Sister, don't be angry. We didn't show up because we wanted to give you guys a chance to act freely. Otherwise, if we just watched him being bullied by you guys and didn't do anything, he would definitely complain to us. Leng Shuang said helplessly. We haven't seen each other for a few years, why has elder sister's courage become smaller instead? Leng Ruoxiu raised her brows as if she couldn't believe it. AI. It's hard to explain in a few words. Ever since Leng Yichun returned, we've all been living in an abyss of suffering. Leng Shuang complained. Was that guy Leng Yimin's younger brother? Your uncle? Leng Ruoxiu asked Leng Wudi after a moment of curiosity. It's a clan brother with a very distant relationship. The mother and son looked at each other and sighed. Then why are you so afraid of him? Leng Ruoxiu could tell that the mother and son in front of her were helpless towards Leng Yichun and became even more curious. He has caught the old ancestor's eye and has been very favored in recent years. Leng Shuang explained. No wonder. He didn't even receive any punishment for provoking me. Leng Ruoxiu said as she came to a sudden realization. It seemed that in this day and age, people with backing were indeed not easy to deal with. However, she didn't care if Leng Shaoqing would punish Leng Yichun because of the previous incident. Anyway, as long as that fellow was blind enough to find trouble with her, then he couldn't blame her for not giving the Leng family face. That's good too. We don't have to be bored. The mother parasol tree replied nonchalantly after hearing Leng Ruoxiu's words. This is... Leng Shuang finally had the opportunity to ask about the identity of the parasol tree mother tree. A senior I met in the divine realm. Leng Ruoxiu explained simply. She did not want to reveal too much about the identity of the parasol tree mother tree. Leng Shuang and Leng Wudi immediately bowed to the mother tree, Senior, this junior has been impolite. You're welcome, the mother parasol tree smiled gently. She had a good impression of the mother and son. Seeing that they had a good relationship with Shuer, she was naturally willing to give them some face. After the four of them had gotten to know each other, Ling Shuang enthusiastically did her part as the host and ordered people to serve quite a lot of good wine and food. They chatted and laughed, and only then did Ling Shuang ask about the purpose of Ling Ruoxu's trip. Chapter 26-22, Are You Sick? 1. Seeing that Ling Shuang had finally asked the main question, Ling Ruoxue smiled faintly and said, I came to the Haotian continent for a tour and found out that it doesn't seem to be very peaceful. How is the Ling family doing? Ling Ruoxue's question was obviously a deliberate attempt to see how Ling Shuang would answer. When Ling Shuang heard this, she was suddenly in a dilemma. She thought that Sister Shuer was blaming the Ling family for not lending a helping hand to the Luo family and had come to question them. So, for a moment, she did not know how to answer. Say that the Ling clan's situation is not good? However, the Ling family was still living peacefully in the city. How could they say that the Ling family was doing well? Since he was not bad, why did he turn a blind eye to the Luo family's misfortune? Ling Shuang thought about it for a moment and felt that no matter what she said, it might annoy little sister Shuer. Thinking of this, she didn't dare to speak. Seeing that his mother was in a difficult position, Ling Wudi had to take over the difficult task. He sighed and said, I'm sure you've seen the current situation of the entire Haotian continent. At present, the members of the Ling family are all staying in the proud cold city, and we rarely walk on the continent. Ling Wudi's words were flawless. He did not reveal the Ling family's current situation, nor did he complain too much to Ling Ruoxue. He also fulfilled the old ancestor's request of not telling Ling Ruoxue the entire situation. He thought that Ling Ruoxue would be understanding and let this matter pass, but who knew that Ling Ruoxue was not satisfied with his answer. She laughed coldly and said, Ling Wudi is indeed the young master of the Ling family. Your answer is so formal. However, since you've said so, I'll believe you. I was going to help you if you were in trouble, but it seems unnecessary now. I'm sure your Ling clan will be able to handle the situation. After listening to Ling Ruoxue's words, the mother and son looked at each other with bitter smiles. They knew that they had still angered this little girl who loved to hold grudges. Now, this little girl was truly angry. Ai. It was all their fault for being so full of themselves. Both mother and son were extremely regretful and tried to appease Ling Ruoxue's anger. Who knew that the other party would not give them a chance to speak at all? Ling Ruoxue even went straight to the point, Sister, you've changed. We've grown distant. When she said this, Ling Ruoxue's beautiful face was filled with disappointment. When Ling Shuang heard this, she felt extremely upset. How could she have wanted this? However, she could not disobey the words of her old grand madam. Just as Ling Shuang was filled with regret, Ling Ruoxue, who had finished speaking, had already turned around and returned to her room. The parasol tree mother sighed and said, You two can go back first. We also need to rest. Looking at the blazing sun hanging high in the sky, the mother and son were quite helpless. This was really a good excuse to send off their guests. The sun hadn't even set yet, but they were already going to rest. They were quite helpless about this. Sighing, Ling Shuang and Ling Wudi left the snow garden gloomily. After watching the mother and son leave, the parasol tree mother tree walked into the room and glanced at Ling Ruoxue who was sitting on the chair and playing with the golden eagle. She smiled and said, Shuer, are you really angry? No, I didn't have much hope for the Ling family, so why would I be angry? Ling Ruoxue said nonchalantly. But the mother and son just now took it seriously. The mother parasol tree said helplessly. Yes, I know. In the Ling family, this mother and son are the only ones I like, but they don't dare to tell me the truth for the sake of the Ling family. Although it was their own choice, and they have no obligation to tell me anything about the Ling family, I am still a little disappointed in them. Besides, I think I have shown my sincerity by coming to the proud cold city. For the sake of our ancestor, I can't just sit by and do nothing about the Leng family's difficulties. But now it seems that I was thinking too much. They even thought that I was here to cause trouble. Leng Ruoxue said helplessly. In fact, she could still understand Leng Shuang and her son's thoughts of standing on the family's side. After all, the present was not like the past. Now, the Leng family needed to be united. However, understanding did not mean approval. Perhaps the Leng family valued their face very much, but she really did not think that the Leng family's face was worth much. After hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, the mother parasol tree could not help but laugh. Shuer, you really don't think you're here to cause trouble? Thanks, of course not. Leng Ruoxue replied matter-of-factly, and as she spoke, she playfully snatched the fruit that the golden eagle was holding tightly in its arms. The two of them began a tug-of-war. The golden hawk turned to Leng Ruoxue and said angrily, "Scoundrel! Scoundrel! You're so bad, how could you snatch my fruit? If I'm not mistaken, I'm the one who gave you this fruit." Leng Ruoxue said with a half-smile. "Since you've given it to me, it's mine. How can you take it back?" The golden hawk said angrily and looked at the mother tree for help. The mother parasol tree looked at the two fellows in front of it and was really speechless. She sighed and ignored the golden hawk's plea for help. She turned to Leng Ruoxue and said, "Girl, you just arrived and you already smashed their city walls. You can't blame me for that." Leng Ruoxue did not feel guilty at all and continued to play with the golden eagle. Sighing heavily again, the mother parasol tree gave up on preaching to Leng Ruoxue and turned around to sit at the side to watch the show. Meanwhile, Leng Ruoxue and the golden eagle were even more excited. At the same time, Leng Shuang and Leng Wudi, who had just returned from Leng Ruoxue's place, were invited over by Leng Shaoqing. She stood uneasily in the old ancestor's study room. Both mother and son did not say a word, and the atmosphere in the study room was so heavy that it was hard to breathe. After a long time, Leng Shaoqing looked deeply at Leng Shuang and Leng Wudi before he slowly said, "What did that girl say?" "Old ancestor, what do you mean?" Leng Shuang raised her head and looked at Leng Shaoqing with a confused expression. She wanted to play dumb, but she did not know if she could fool him. "What's that girl going to do this time?" Leng Shaoqing asked through gritted teeth. "He said he was here for a tour in the Haotian continent." Leng Shuang said honestly. "What else?" Leng Shaoqing asked again. "No more." Leng Shuang blinked her eyes and said with an innocent face. "No more. Aren't you two good sisters? Didn't she say anything else to you?" It was clear that Leng Shaoqing did not believe Leng Shuang's words. From what he could remember, that girl would never be so cold to anyone who caught her eye. "No, she has already turned against me," Leng Shuang said honestly. Actually, she really did not want to accept the Grand Madame's mission to test Leng Ruoxue. Now, the test was not successful, and their sisterhood was over. "What? Why did she fall out with you? Is she really that heartless?" Leng Xiaoqing's expression turned ugly when he heard this. Chapter 26-23, Are You Sick? 2. It's not that she's heartless, it's just that she thinks we're too distant. Leng Shuang said indifferently. "How could this be? Didn't you treat them well?" As far as he knew, Leng Shuang and her son had moved the best ingredients of the Leng family to the falling snow garden. If this was considered as being estranged with her, then what was considered as not being estranged? That hateful girl was really hard to serve. This news gave him a headache. "We did treat her well, but she thinks we're not sincere," Leng Shuang said helplessly. "Great ancestor, you didn't want us to reveal the current situation of the Leng family, so we didn't dare to say anything. We only said that the members of the Leng family are all staying in the proud cold city and rarely walk around the Haotian continent." She thought that answer was too official, so she was annoyed. Leng Wudi added after receiving a look from his mother. "What's there to be annoyed about? Could it be that she really wanted to hear that our Leng family's status had fallen by 1,000 feet and was not as good as before?" We have to rely on her help to restore the Ling family's prestige. Ling Shaoqing roared, his face ashen from anger. Faced with the old Grand Madam's questioning, Ling Shuang and her son did not know how to respond. If they could, they really wanted to say, yes. To be honest, there was nothing to be embarrassed about. The Ling family really needed Ling Ruoxiu's help now. Unfortunately, on the one hand, the great ancestor was concerned about the Ling family's face, and on the other hand, he wanted Ling Ruoxiu to take the initiative to do something for the Ling family. This way, the Ling family would not be too embarrassed. But was this possible? They were all very clear about Ling Ruoxiu's temper. If you want her to help you, you must first show your sincerity, right? However, the old ancestor was very conflicted about this. He wanted to save his face so much that he had to suffer. Now, such a powerful helper not only did not intend to help, but also wanted to watch the fun and not care about the matter. It could be imagined how depressed the Ling family would be. And now, the first person to be depressed was naturally the Ling clan's greatest elder. According to Ling Xiaqing's thoughts, Ling Ruoxiu should have heard that Sun Tao had found a group of experts from God knows where and caused chaos in the Haotian continent. Many clans and powers were affected, and the Luo clan was the one who suffered the most. As the master of the Luo family, since Ling Ruoxiu had returned to the Haotian continent, it was natural for her to stand up for the Luo family. And while she stood up for them, she could also cooperate with them. Wouldn't that be a happy ending for everyone? This way, the Ling family would have Ling Ruoxiu, a powerful ally, and they would not need to seek help from Ling Ruoxiu, who had never treated them as part of the Ling family. They could also get rid of Sun Tao and the others. What a perfect ending this would be. It had to be said that Ling Xiaqing's idea was pretty good. This was because in his heart, whoever spoke first at this moment would mean that the other party was weaker. In a relationship with a strong person, the weaker party would naturally have a lower right to speak. This was definitely something that Ling Shaoqing, the head of the Ling clan, would not want to see. From what he knew, even though Ling Ruoxiu didn't acknowledge the Ling family, in terms of bloodline, she was still a member of the Ling family. This was something that no one could deny. Since she was a member of the Ling family, he wouldn't pursue her unfilial behavior of not acknowledging the main family. At this time, shouldn't she properly display her responsibility as a junior? It was precisely because of these thoughts that he hoped Ling Ruoxiu would help him, but at the same time, he didn't want to cast aside his status as an elder and lower his pride to beg a junior. Unfortunately, he had forgotten that Ling Ruoxiu had no sense of belonging to the Ling family and had never admitted that she was a member of the Ling family on Haotian continent. It would be impossible for her to take the initiative to show concern for the Ling family's current situation. Thanks, as long as Ling Ruoxiu was conscious, such a thing would never happen. Although she would give her ancestor face and come to the Ling family to take a look, it was absolutely impossible for her to take the initiative to help the Ling family. And now, the Ling family seemed to not need her help, so she was very happy. In this way, he could go back and explain to his cheap ancestor. After all, he didn't need him to meddle, and he couldn't just force himself to move forward, right? She couldn't do such a thing. Right now, Ling Ruoxiu's attitude towards the Ling clan on the Haotian continent was neither to take the initiative nor to reject them. The members of the Ling clan on the Haotian continent, especially those from Ling Xiaqing's lineage, who were led by him, naturally hoped that Ling Ruoxiu would take the initiative to lend a helping hand. But this could only become their beautiful dream. After Ling Shaoqing found out that Ling Ruoxiu had angered Ling Shuang and her son, he was so troubled and depressed that he could not eat for a few days. He had been sighing all day long. Finally, after he sighed countless times, Ling Xiaoxiao, who had been pretending to be invisible, could no longer take it. He pulled up Ling Shaoqing, who was in a dilemma, and roared, "Big brother, let's go. I'll bring you to that little girl. Why are you looking for her?" Ling Shaoqing looked at Ling Xiaoxiao warily. "Go and tell her that the Ling family needs her help now." Ling Xiaoxiao said honestly. "You want me to go beg that bad girl?" Ling Xiaqing's face turned black instantly. "What else can we do? Do you expect them to take the initiative to come to our door and be ordered around by us? Big brother, wake up. Stop dreaming, alright? That girl isn't someone who can be manipulated by others. Leng Xiaoxiao's words were rather direct. He did not wish for his elder brother to have any hope that she would take the initiative to ask him or send herself to his door. Based on his understanding of Leng Ruoxue, that was simply impossible. Furthermore, based on what he knew, she had been living happily in the falling snow garden for the past few days. She had been living a carefree life. In fact, he was very clear about his eldest brother's thoughts. It was nothing more than the fact that all the younger generations in his family couldn't compare to Leng Ruoxue. It wasn't that they couldn't compare to her in one aspect, but that they couldn't compare to her in all aspects. His intelligence, wealth, and resources were inferior to others, and his abilities were even worse. In front of Leng Ruoxue, even he, the elder ancestor of the Leng family, felt inferior, let alone his eldest brother, who had always been proud and thought that his descendants would live up to expectations. It could be said that Leng Ruoxue's sudden appearance had extinguished all of eldest brother's sense of superiority. Among the three brothers, the eldest brother's descendants were the most abundant and filled with talents, followed by his. The second brother's descendants were the least. There was only one Leng Qianya on the Haotian continent. However, the appearance of Leng Ruoxue and her two grandsons had dulled the brilliance of the Leng family's descendants. They could not even shine a little. This fact was a huge shock to his big brother. Even he was envious, jealous, and hateful. After all, who didn't want such a capable descendant? But they didn't. However, it was fortunate that Leng Ruoxue had the bloodline of the Leng clan. This was something that no one could deny. In front of Leng Ruoxue, the members of the Leng family who knew her true strength were both afraid and loving of her. Especially after they found out that all the members of the Leng family who had a history with her were no longer in this world, their fear of Leng Ruoxue had risen to an unprecedented level. However, at the same time, they also knew that if the Leng family wanted to regain its glory, they could not do so without Leng Ruoxue. Therefore, most of the clan members showed their goodwill towards Leng Ruoxue's arrival. According to their thinking, it didn't matter whether she took a fancy to them or not. What was important was that they didn't want to offend the goddess of killing. With this thought in mind, unless there was something important, most of the Leng clan members wouldn't disturb Leng Ruoxue. Chapter 26-24, Are You Sick? 3. As for those who couldn't open their eyes, they would just turn a blind eye and treat it as sending toys to Leng Ruoxue. Otherwise, it would be quite boring, right? It was precisely because they had such a thought that the entire Leng family turned a blind eye to Leng Yichun's provocative behavior. However, they didn't dare to let that fool Leng Yichun off too easily. Otherwise, if he really angered Leng Ruoxue, she would definitely make a fool of herself. Leng Xiaoxiao's eyes were fixed on his elder brother, who was in a dilemma. In an instant, he had already gone through the situation in his mind. Anyway, he had already thought it through clearly a long time ago. He just did not know when his elder brother would come around. Seeing that Leng Xiaoqing was only frowning and not saying anything, Leng Xiaoxiao could only continue to persuade her, "Big brother, I know that you also want to be on good terms with that girl. Otherwise, you wouldn't have taken the initiative to become an ally with the Luo family. So, don't be so prideful. Let's go and talk things out with that girl. She won't sit by and do nothing about the Leng family. Who said I want to be on good terms with her? I'm her elder, shouldn't she be the one to please me? Also, what's wrong with being an ally of the Luo family? That was me giving face to Xiao Yu, I didn't want to lower my head. You have to be clear about this." Leng Xiaoxiao's words finally caused Leng Xiaoqing to have a slight reaction. However, the words that came out of his mouth were filled with the smell of gunpowder. Hearing this, Leng Xiaoxiao could only ignore the smell of gunpowder. He consoled his elder brother and said, "All right. You only became an ally of the Luo family because you wanted to give second brother face. You're Leng Ruoxue's elder, so she has to come and beg you. Is it okay for me to say this? Big brother?" Previously at the city gate, didn't you already put down your pride and took the initiative to apologize to the Luo family for Leng Yichun's actions? Why are you quarreling now? Leng Xiaoxiao could not understand. What was Big Brother trying to do by being so willful? Could it be that he was counting on that little lass Leng Ruoxue to coax him? Wasn't this too unrealistic? In fact, he was right. Leng Xiaoqing really thought that way. Even though he had given the Luo family some face at the city gate, this did not mean that he could forgive Leng Ruoxue for ignoring him as an elder. Hence, after he had arranged for Leng Ruoxue and the rest to stay in the snow garden, he did not appear because he hoped that Leng Ruoxue would take the initiative to visit him. Who knew that a few days had passed and the little girl was living in the snow garden with good food and drink? She did not have any intention of meeting Leng Xiaoqing at all. It was as if they had forgotten about his existence. As such, the proud and arrogant Leng Xiaoqing was naturally infuriated. However, it was not convenient for him to share his little thoughts with outsiders, so he could only sulk on his own. In Leng Xiaoxiao's eyes, his behavior was naturally seen as a quarrel. Now, Leng Xiaoqing, who had obviously reached a certain level of bickering, immediately retorted when she heard Leng Xiaoxiao's words, "Who said I was being difficult? Who said that? Am I not that little girl's elder? Shouldn't I be the one to greet the elders? I should. But she's not an ordinary junior. At the very least, I don't dare to treat her as a junior. Big Brother, I can't see through Leng Ruoxu's current strength." Leng Xiaoxiao sighed softly. He had finally revealed this cruel truth, hoping that his big brother would be able to recognize the truth as soon as possible. Even though Leng Ruoxu's current strength was only at the level of a mystical king, anyone with a discerning eye would know that she had long gone to the firmament, so it was naturally impossible for her to only be at the level of a mystical king. In the world of cultivators, the strong had always been respected. If Leng Ruoxue did not have a trace of bloodline connection with the Leng family, they would probably have to address her as senior. But now, at least Leng Ruoxue had shown some friendliness, and the two sides were still equal. Since that was the case, Leng Xiaoxiao felt that there was no need for them to worsen the relationship between the two sides for the sake of so-called face. After all, Leng Ruoxue was not the one who needed to rely on them, but they needed her. Leng Xiaoxiao's words made Leng Xiaoqing fall silent once again. That's right. Xiaoxiao was right. Leng Ruoxu's abilities had probably reached a level that they could not imagine. He naturally knew how monstrous that girl's aptitude was. Logically speaking, he should be happy that his family had such a talented descendant, but he just couldn't be happy at all. Throughout Leng Ruoxu's growth, the clan had never given her any help. As such, what right did he have to ask her to contribute to the clan? Just because of that wisp of illusory bloodline? Putting himself in Leng Ruoxu's shoes, he would also feel that this reason was too far-fetched. He also knew that Leng Ruoxu's visit to the Leng family this time was definitely for Xiao Yu. AI. Xiao Yu had a good descendant. At that moment, Leng Xiaoqing was extremely jealous of Leng Xiaoyu. He even felt that he would be willing to exchange such a huge number of descendants for Leng Ruoxue. Unfortunately, that was impossible. Forget it, I've been hoping for too much. That girl has never been an obedient descendant and has never thought of her as a member of our Leng family. Since that's the case, why should I still consider myself an elder? That would only make that girl loathe us even more. After a moment of silence, Leng Xiaoqing spoke slowly. Thanks, in fact, he had already known that this would be the case, but he had been unwilling to admit it. Now, he had no choice but to admit it. Xiaoxiao had already made it so clear, and he could not continue to lie to himself. Big Brother, it's good that you can think this way. In reality, it doesn't matter if Leng Ruoxue is willing to admit her relationship with us or not. Her ties with us will never be broken because as long as Second Brother is around, she can't ignore our Leng family. Second Brother isn't someone who doesn't care about brotherhood, so as long as we don't make any excessive requests, Leng Ruoxue will always be our greatest backing. Leng Xiaoxiao analyzed. Do you think that Leng Ruoxue will become our backing? Leng Xiaoqing asked in surprise. He had thought that even though Leng Ruoxue could not be his junior, she would at least be able to interact with him on an equal footing. However, Xiaoxiao's words clearly placed Leng Ruoxue's status above the Leng family's. Was this appropriate? Big brother, don't tell me that you don't feel relieved when you see that little girl? Leng Xiaoxiao asked instead of answering. Leng Xiaoqing pondered for a moment, then nodded gloomily. He could not deny that the moment he saw that detestable little girl, he was indeed rather happy. He even felt as if his savior had arrived. It's precisely because of this that we've unconsciously treated Leng Ruoxue as our salvation. At least with her around, it's as if we have a pillar of support. It's not as if Big Brother isn't aware of what that girl has done back then. Before she was a Dark Supreme, she had dared to turn the Sun family upside down. Now that she's gone to the firmament for a period of time, I'm afraid her destructive power is even greater than before. Leng Xiaoxiao's face showed a hint of sympathy towards the end of his sentence. Of course, he was not pitying the Leng family, but the unlucky Sun Tao. I agree with what you've said, but isn't it a bit of an exaggeration to say that she's our backer just because of this? Leng Xiaoqing was still reluctant to admit the truth, so he asked with uncertainty. Big brother, let's face reality. Even if Leng Ruoxue can't be our backing now, she will definitely be in the future. You have to trust my intuition and judgment. Leng Xiaoxiao sighed softly. All right. I believe you, so what should we do now? Leng Xiaoqing was out of ideas. Of course I'm going to show some concern for that little girl. Leng Xiaoxiao said with a smile. Leng Xiaoyu nodded upon hearing this. She was finally willing to put down her pride and go meet Leng Ruoxue. At this moment, an uninvited guest happened to visit Leng Ruoxue's snow garden. This uninvited guest was none other than Leng Yichun, who had been thrown out of the courtyard by the mother parasol tree time and time again but had appeared in front of them again and again with an unyielding attitude. Leng Ruoxue and the mother parasol tree could not even be bothered to look at Leng Yichun, who was reporting to them almost every day to pick a fight. Anyway, this fellow would always question them with the same few words every time he came and there was nothing new about it. They had heard him so many times that their ears had grown calluses. Of course, when they were sick of him, the mother parasol tree would display its might and throw him out of the courtyard like a chicken. This had simply become a fixed show for the past few days. The Luo family was numb to watching such performances every day. However, if Leng Yichun did not show up one day, they might not be used to it. In the garden, Leng Yichun, who had been here for a while, saw that he was completely ignored and started to howl at the top of his voice. Leng Ruoxue, you're too rude as a junior. I'm your elder, how can you ignore my existence? He said the same thing again. However, Leng Ruoxue was clearly in a good mood today. Even though she still did not raise her head to look at the other party, she was willing to respond. What do you want me to do? Leng Ruoxue said lazily. Of course, you must respectfully invite me to sit down, then warmly greet me and sincerely listen to my reprimand. Leng Yichun said as if it was a matter of course. After saying these words, he immediately felt a few more gazes with unknown meanings. Although he didn't know what they meant, he chose to ignore them. You're not sick, right? After listening to Leng Yichun's high-pitched speech, Leng Ruoxue couldn't help but hold her forehead and said in a speechless manner. Chapter 26-25, It's hard to guess Shuai'er's thoughts. 1. Of course I'm not sick. I'm in good health, and the food is delicious. Leng Yichun didn't hear the sarcasm in Leng Ruoxue's words as he patted his chest and shouted. Hearing what he said, the onlookers couldn't help but burst into laughter. The hawk laughed so hard that its stomach hurt. It rolled on the stone table in the garden to show its good mood. Since you're not sick, why are you talking nonsense? Leng Ruoxue said with a straight face. Her face was filled with confusion. Nonsense? Who was talking nonsense? You wretched girl, are you talking about me? Leng Yichun finally reacted and his face turned ashen from anger. He then jumped up and put on a stance as though he was going to fight to the death with Leng Ruoxue. This was definitely slander. Leng Yichun was furious. The consequences. Of course, Leng Ruoxue would not care about it. At least you're not so stupid that there's no cure. Leng Yichun, I'm talking about you. Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. The infuriating expression on her face was really infuriating. It was undeniable that with Leng Yichun, she had once again found the feeling of making one vomit blood from anger. This made her feel a little more comforted. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but glance at the golden hawk, who was laughing so hard that its belly was shaking. This little guy was definitely not normal. He could be considered her nemesis. You, how dare you? Leng Ruoxue, you actually dare to address your elder by his name. This is unfilial. I am going to punish you with the family law. Just you wait. Leng Yichun was so angry that his face turned green and white, then white and green again, and his words were even more incoherent. Elder? You? What right do you have to be my elder? You want to punish me with the family law? What a joke. Leng Yichun, when are you going to bring the family law? I'll be waiting for you. Leng Ruoxue replied calmly. Leng Ruoxue. You. Do you even have any respect for the Leng clan? After hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, Leng Yichun was so angry that he didn't know what to say. He held it in for a long time before he finally managed to squeeze out such a sentence. He was thinking that this wretched girl from the Leng family should be afraid now, right? In this world, no one could ignore the power of a family clan, and Leng Ruoxue was no exception. Unfortunately, his plan was not bad, but it was destined to fail. If it was someone else, they might have been afraid of the clan, but the person he had met was Leng Ruoxue. A Leng Ruoxue who had never placed any importance on the power of her family. As such, his threats were naturally of no use. His words were no different from scratching an itch through one's boot. To Leng Ruoxue, it did not even hurt. I really don't have any. Leng Ruoxue was silent for a moment before she replied honestly. Oh. A good child should not lie. You unfilial descendant of the Leng family. I will report this to the forefather and have you expelled from the Leng family. Leng Yichun was really furious this time and he couldn't help but speak without thinking. Immediately, everyone heard a roar. How audacious! After these two words appeared, two figures appeared in the garden. When the grand elder of the Luo family saw who it was, he felt that the situation was getting more and more chaotic. How was he going to resolve this? He didn't know if his master would be blamed by the Leng family's old ancestor. Thanks, it had to be said that the thinking of the grand elder of the Luo family was still very traditional. Although he had heard that the relationship between his master and the Leng family was not very harmonious, in his opinion, no matter how bad the relationship was, his master was still a member of the Leng family. This was an undeniable fact. In that case, it was not a big problem for his master to say that he did not take the Leng family seriously in private. However, once this matter was put on the table, he felt that no matter what the outcome was, it would not be good for his master. One must know that in this world, the power of a clan was absolutely powerful. No one could ignore the power of the family and be unaffected by the influence of the family. The strength of the family also had endless benefits to the powerful. Therefore, logically speaking, the grand elder of the Luo family definitely did not wish for the two sides to fall out completely. At the very least, it was fine to maintain a respectful relationship on the surface. But now, the situation of being respectful to each other was probably impossible to maintain. Just as the grand elder of the Luo family was feeling a little worried, Leng Yichun had already dashed in front of Leng Shaoqing and Leng Xiaoxiao and complained, "Old ancestors, this Leng Ruoxue is really unfilial. She actually doesn't respect our Leng family. She just admitted it herself." Then, he turned to glare at Leng Ruoxue and roared, "Leng Ruoxue, do you dare to deny it?" "Why should I deny it?" Leng Ruoxue gave a faint smile as her beautiful eyes glanced at the person who had arrived. "My two ancestors, you've heard it. Leng Ruoxue has admitted it herself. I suggest that we expel this unfilial descendant from the Leng family. Our Leng family cannot have such a descendant." Otherwise, it will affect the Leng family's reputation. Leng Yichun said insensibly, completely ignoring the two Leng clan's old ancestors' faces which had already turned black. When the Luo family members who were watching from the side saw this scene, they simply felt some sympathy for Leng Yichun. However, looking at the expressions of the two elders of the Leng family, they could not tell whether they were angry at Leng Yichun or angry at their own master for being unfilial. This was really a difficult question to understand. Get out of here. Leng Xiaoqing suppressed her anger and said coldly. Leng Yichun nodded and turned to Leng Ruoxue. Leng Ruoxue, did you hear that? The old ancestor wants you to get out of here. Looking at Leng Yichun's appearance of a fox exploiting a tiger's might, Leng Ruoxue couldn't help but laugh. She sighed helplessly and said, "Are you sure he was talking to me?" "Humph. Who else could it be if not you? It can't be me, right?" Leng Yichun said in a matter-of-fact and self-righteous manner. "It's possible." Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. "You," Leng Yichun pointed at Leng Ruoxue. He was so angry that he could not speak. Suddenly, he felt his body sink, and then he felt like he was flying. Then, everyone heard a plop and a heavy object fell to the ground. The crowd was no stranger to such a voice. However, the person who did this had given them quite a shock. The person who had kicked was not Leng Ruoxue or the parasol tree. It was Leng Xiaoqing, the Leng clan's greatest ancestor. After kicking Leng Yichun out, Leng Xiaoqing suddenly felt very pleased. No wonder the people around this girl liked to kick people so much. It felt good indeed. Patting off the dust on her hands, Leng Xiaoqing smiled faintly and said, "Little girl, you don't have to take that idiot's words to heart. I'll punish him later." "There's no need for punishment. Wouldn't it be better to keep it as my toy?" Obviously, she didn't take Leng Yichun's words to heart because she didn't think of herself as a member of the Leng family. This was a fact that everyone in the Leng family knew, but Leng Yichun didn't know about it. This clearly explained the problem. Chapter 26:26, It's hard to guess Shuai'er's thoughts, too. Alright. Leng Xiaoqing nodded helplessly. In reality, in his heart, Leng Yichun was just a clown who was used to please Leng Ruoxue. He was only afraid that Leng Yichun's words would make Leng Ruoxue angry, so he specially said that. But now that he saw that Leng Ruoxue did not take Leng Yichun's words seriously at all, his heart felt sour again, and it was especially unpleasant. However, Leng Ruoxue did not have the time to care about how Leng Xiaoqing felt. She asked directly, "Is there something you need? Can't I come to see you if I have nothing to do?" When Leng Xiaoqing heard Leng Ruoxue's words, he was a little unhappy. "We don't visit without a reason. Our relationship doesn't seem to be good enough for us to visit each other, right?" Leng Ruoxue deliberately put on a suspicious expression. As expected, Leng Xiaoqing was a little angry after hearing this. Stinky girl. Bad girl. He had already lowered himself to visit, but the other party actually thought that he had bad intentions. This was really too much. Leng Xiaoqing could not help but curse in his heart. However, he really had a reason for looking for this little girl. When he thought of this, he suddenly became listless. Sob. Bad girl. He was really too bad. Couldn't he leave him some face? Leng Xiaoqing was depressed. Unconsciously, his gaze towards Leng Ruoxue carried a trace of resentment. His gaze, on the other hand, gave Leng Ruoxue a shock. Ugh! Did I see wrongly? The Leng family's first ancestor was actually looking at her like she was a mistreated wife. Leng Ruoxue was a little shocked. Did she do something? Leng Ruoxue, who was reflecting on herself, was completely frightened by Leng Xiaoqing's resentful gaze. Fortunately, Leng Xiaoxiao noticed his eldest brother's strange behavior and pulled at the hem of his clothes in time. Only then did Leng Xiaoqing finally return to normal. However, just these few seconds were enough for Leng Ruoxue to be on tenterhooks. If you have something to say, just say it directly. Please don't look at me like that, I'm scared. Leng Ruoxue shivered and couldn't take it anymore. You still no fear? Leng Xiaoqing gritted her teeth when she heard that. I must know. Leng Ruoxua nodded her head seriously. She felt that she was too honest and did not even know how to lie. However, Leng Xiaoqing's expression turned even uglier after he heard what she said. How come I didn't see it? Leng Xiaoqing was speechless. This girl is really too shameless. Then I can only say that you don't have enough eyes. After Leng Ruoxua finished speaking seriously, she turned her gaze elsewhere, not looking at the man who was starting to exude endless resentment again. Leng Xiaoqing was so angry that he was speechless. He realized that this girl's ability to anger people to death had grown again. Thanks, cough cough. Leng Xiaoxiao, who was at the side, noticed the damn oppressive atmosphere. After coughing twice, he took the initiative to speak to Leng Ruoxua. Little girl, we indeed have something to discuss with you. Upon hearing this, Leng Ruoxua turned her beautiful eyes back to Leng Xiaoxiao and said, if you have something to say, say it. It's like this. The entire Haotian continent has been turned into a mess by Sun Tao and the others, and all the major families have suffered great losses. So, we hope that we can join forces to get rid of Sun Tao and the others and return peace to the Haotian continent. Leng Xiaoxiao tried to find the right words. Return the Haotian continent to its peaceful state. What does it have to do with me whether the Haotian continent is peaceful or chaotic? After Leng Ruoxua heard what Leng Xiaoxiao had to say, she asked with a puzzled look on her face. One should know that she was just a passerby in the Haotian continent. Now that her base camp was in the divinity, she naturally did not have to care about the Haotian continent's affairs. Therefore, she really had no intention of being a savior. However, after Leng Xiaoxiao heard Leng Ruoxua's words, he misunderstood. He thought that Leng Ruoxua didn't want to get involved in this matter, so he advised her with a heavy heart, little girl, although you are no longer in the Haotian continent, your power is still here. Getting rid of Sun Tao and the others will be beneficial to their future development. So I hope you can consider it carefully. This is not only for the whole Haotian continent, but also for the Luo family and your Wanshan city. What if I say that I plan to move the Luo family and Wanshan city to the divinity? After Leng Xiaoxiao finished speaking, Leng Ruoxua smiled and told him this shocking news. As expected, Leng Xiaoqing and Leng Xiaoxiao were both stunned when they heard that. Never in their dreams would they have thought that Leng Ruoxua would not want her subordinates to stay in the Haotian continent. Could it be that this girl had returned this time to bring her subordinates away? If that was the case, she really didn't need to care about Haotian. However, without her help, it would be even more difficult for them to get rid of Sun Tao than to ascend to heaven. When they thought of this, the two of them frowned. Observing their expressions, Leng Ruoxua threw out another piece of shocking news. If you guys want to leave this place, I can take you guys with me. His words successfully brought Leng Xiaoqing and Leng Xiaoxiao back to their senses. We can't leave. If we leave, what will happen to the Leng clan? The two of them said in unison. The Leng clan, before they could finish their words, they could not help but widen their eyes and look at Leng Ruoxua in disbelief. Did this girl mean that she was going to bring them along with her? Not just the two of them, but the entire Leng family. Was it like this? Thinking of this possibility, Leng Xiaoqing asked with uncertainty, you mean the Leng family will leave the Haotian continent with you? Yup. This is the will of my cheap old ancestor. However, it's up to you whether you want to leave or not. Leng Ruoxua said indifferently, casting this matter aside completely. She didn't want the two people in front of her to think that she had any deep feelings for the Leng family, which was why she wanted to bring them along. In fact, that was impossible. If our Leng family leaves, what will happen to the Haotian continent? Leng Xiaoqing couldn't help but ask. The Leng family's power on the Haotian continent was the result of countless years of development. Once they left, it meant that they would have to start over again. In addition, the divine world was a rather cruel place. How could they protect themselves when they arrived there with their strength? At that moment, Leng Xiaoqing considered many things. Like Leng Xiaoyu, he had returned from the godly mainland, so he naturally knew better than anyone who had never been there how cruel it was. However, when he thought about the Luo family and Wanshan City, he felt that since Leng Ruoxue dared to say that she would leave with her subordinates, she must have a way to protect herself. That was why he was in a dilemma. The Haotian continent has been reshuffled, and the Leng family will no longer exist. Leng Ruoxue replied honestly. Wouldn't that be too easy for Sun Tao and the others? If we leave, well, just give them some space. At the thought of this, Leng Xiaoqing felt a little indignant. Don't tell me you want to live in the Haotian continent forever and fight for territory with Sun Tao. Are you so short-sighted? No wonder the Leng family is so oppressed by Sun Tao. Why don't you think about it? You've been living in the Haotian continent, and you'll have to leave here sooner or later. Your strength won't improve much here. Or do you want to stay here and wait for your death? Everything in the Haotian continent, no matter how noble, is just a fleeting cloud in the divine world. The divine world is a place where ambitious people should fight for. Don't you want to fight for a place in the divine world? Leng Ruoxue said with a look of disdain. Chapter 26-27, It's hard to guess Shuai'er's thoughts. 3. Her words were not polite at all. However, Leng Xiaoqing and Leng Xiaoxiao did not have any temper at all when they heard her. It was undeniable that what Leng Ruoxue said was the truth. Although the immortal realm was cruel, it was still a place that everyone yearned for. On the Haotian continent, so what if one became a top family? Wasn't he still beaten up by the people Sun Tao brought back from the divine realm and forced to hide in the proud cold city? They didn't dare to step out of the city for fear of being attacked by Sun Tao and the others. They had had enough of this kind of sullen life. In a short moment, their minds immediately became clear and they thought it through. The divine world was the biggest stage. They could not lose their will to fight in the divine world just because of its cruelty. Such an idea of not retreating was definitely a great taboo for cultivators. More importantly, Leng Ruoxue was right. In the Haotian continent, their status seemed to be noble, but their strength had not improved at all. If this continued, in the long run, they would really be sitting around and waiting for death. After thinking it through in an instant, Leng Xiaoqing and Leng Xiaoxiao immediately looked at each other and made a decision at the same time. We agree to bring the Leng clan with you. After Leng Xiaoqing had thought it through, she immediately became decisive and spoke without any hesitation. Little girl Shuai'er, when we reach the immortal realm, you have to take care of us more. Leng Xiaoxiao added with a smile. Even though his tone sounded like he was joking, this was indeed what he truly thought. If they really moved the entire Leng family to the divinity, the Leng family would probably have more to rely on Leng Ruoxue. I can only guarantee that the Leng family is safe within a certain area of the divine world. Therefore, I hope that you can restrain your clansmen. If someone insensible provokes a big figure that even I can't handle, I can't do anything about it. Leng Ruoxue put the ugly words out first. The important person she was referring to was naturally Wu Cheng. However, she didn't want to say it out loud, in case she scared the two of them. As long as we can have a safe place for the Leng family to slowly develop, that's enough. Leng Xiaoqing and Leng Xiaoxiao nodded at the same time. They were already very satisfied with Leng Ruoxue's progress. However, at this point in time, they still didn't know that the god world that Leng Ruoxue was talking about was a completely different place from what they had in mind. Once the decision was made, Leng Xiaoqing and Leng Xiaoxiao felt a sense of relief. It was as if a huge rock had been lifted off their shoulders. At this moment, they thought of Sun Tao and the rest and felt that it was nothing. Those who were going to develop in the divine realm could not limit their vision to the Haotian continent, which was just a small place. After they had let go of their grudge with Sun Tao, Leng Ruoxue had brought up the matter of Sun Tao again. The two of them were stunned for a long time before they said, Shuai'er, didn't you say you didn't want to argue with Sun Tao? Did I say that? Leng Ruoxue blinked her beautiful eyes and said with an innocent look. In her heart, she couldn't help but wonder, did she look like such a kind person? Ah! Leng Xiaoqing and Leng Xiaoxiao were completely speechless. What did this girl mean by this? Previously, when they had said that they would deal with Sun Tao together, didn't Shuai'er clearly show no interest in it? Now that they had decided to leave the Haotian continent with Leng Ruoxue, she wanted to deal with Sun Tao. What was this? Was he teasing them? The two of them were quite depressed about this. They felt that Shuai's thoughts were very difficult to guess. Leng Ruoxue glanced at their expressions and laughed evilly. Do you think he'll be kind enough to let go of someone who bullied my subordinate? But didn't you say before that? Leng Xiaoxiao could not help but want to remind him, but he had only spoken half of it when he tactfully swallowed the second half of his sentence. I'm just saying that I'm a person who has left the Haotian continent. What does it have to do with me whether the Haotian continent is quiet or not? Am I right? Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. That's right. Leng Xiaoxiao nodded gloomily. He had finally realized what was going on. Had he said the wrong thing? She was not interested in the peace and quiet of Haotian continent, nor did she want to be a savior, but she was very interested in Sun Tao. Now, he finally understood what Leng Ruoxue meant. Sun Tao still had to be eliminated. After he came to his senses, Leng Xiaoxiao did not say a word and waited for Leng Ruoxue's next words with anticipation. You'll have to trouble the two of you to send a message to the families that were persecuted by Sun Tao and invite them to the Leng family to discuss this matter. Leng Ruoxue said to Leng Xiaoqing and Leng Xiaoxiao with a smile. What do you want to do? The two of them asked curiously. Of course I'm here to discuss business with them. You guys don't think I'm doing this for free, do you? Leng Ruoxue smiled ambiguously. She would not help others to take back their territory for nothing. One should know that no one would treasure something that was obtained too easily. Thanks, I'll send someone to inform the great clans. When Leng Xiaoqing heard this, he immediately understood what Leng Ruoxue meant. It looked like this little girl was planning to make a huge profit. I'm sorry to trouble you, Leng Ruoxue was in a good mood. She found Leng Xiaoqing much more pleasing to the eye. It's no trouble at all. After Leng Xiaoqing finished speaking, he turned and ran. If he stayed any longer, he might fall into this girl's trap. Oh my God! This girl was a terrifying vampire. Leng Xiaoqing's heart ached. Upon seeing this, Leng Xiaoxiao also left. The mother parasol tree could not help but chuckle as she watched the two of them leave as if they had seen a ghost. Little girl, you've scared them. What's there to be afraid of? Do they really think him their savior? Leng Ruoxue was speechless. She had always firmly believed that there was nothing in this world that could be obtained without effort. If one wanted to obtain something that one had high hopes for, one would naturally have to pay the price. As for whether they were willing to pay the price, it naturally depended on the person. After Leng Xiaoqing sent out the message, the first to send someone over was the Lan family. Leng Ruoxue only knew Lan Lai as the representative of the Lan family. The rest of them were unfamiliar to her. They were definitely not the Lan family elders that she had bullied before. After seeing Leng Ruoxue, Lan Lai was as warm as ever. He even asked about Bing Yao. One had to know that he had been thinking about Bing Yao all these years. He didn't know if that little thing missed him. However, Leng Ruoxue told him regretfully that Bing Yao had been in closed-door cultivation ever since she went to the God world. She probably did not have the time to miss him. Lan Lai's face fell when he heard this. It was obvious that he had suffered a heavy blow. Seeing that Lan Lai was still the same as before and didn't seem to have changed much, Leng Ruoxue felt a sense of familiarity. Even her tone when speaking to Lan Lai had become much gentler. Seeing this, Leng Wudi laughed bitterly in his heart. It seems like Shuai is still angry with me. That little girl wasn't even angry with the old ancestor anymore, but she kept on being angry with the mother and son, and ignored them. This made him and his mother very worried. The main culprit was obviously the old ancestor, so why did Shuai only hate the mother and son? This was too unfair. Leng Wudi felt a little disgruntled. However, he knew that this was because Shuai had acknowledged them. That was why she was even more angry at their actions. As he watched Leng Ruoxue and Lan Lai chatting happily, he felt a deep sense of regret. They were even more envious and jealous of Lan Lai. However, Lan Lai and Leng Ruoxue had clearly ignored Leng Wudi, who was constantly emitting a resentful aura, and were chatting happily. Leng Ruoxue had even specially mentioned Netherblue. When Lan Lai heard that Leng Ruoxue had met Lan Ming in the God World, he immediately requested that Leng Ruoxue bring him to the God World to have some fun. Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue sized up Lan Lai. If he were to go to the divine realm with his strength at the level of a mystical emperor, in addition to his somewhat carefree character. You really want to go to the divinity? Leng Ruoxue squinted her beautiful eyes and asked as she glanced at Lan Lai. Hee. I do want to, but I definitely can't go to the divine realm with my strength. Sure, in the future when I can also go to the divine realm, you have to take care of me. I can't let others bully me. Lan Lai requested with a smile. No problem. But if you want to go now, I can take you there. Leng Ruoxue thought for a while and couldn't help but think to herself, if I bring this guy to the divine world, Blue Nether should be very happy, right? Thinking of Lan Ming's hesitant expression before she left, Leng Ruoxue knew that Lan Ming also wanted her to take care of the Lan family, but he was too embarrassed to ask because there were too many things. She felt that since she had already taken in Lan Ming, she naturally didn't care about Lan Lai. Lan Lai's eyes went wide when he heard her. He asked in disbelief, Shuer, can you really take me there now? As long as you want to. Leng Ruoxue smiled. I want to. Of course I want to. But, Lan Lai was a little hesitant. As the young master of the Lan family, he couldn't leave so easily. Although he didn't care about the title of the young master of the Lan family, he still had to consider what that old man thought. Can't bear to part with the Lan family? Leng Ruoxue was well aware that the Lan family was different from the Leng family. Even though she didn't admit that she was a member of the Leng family, she was still a member of the Leng family in the eyes of outsiders. So it was only natural for her to take the members of the Leng family with her when she left Haotian continent. However, the Lan family had nothing to do with her. She couldn't possibly take all the members of the Lan family with her just because Lan Lai couldn't bear to do it, right? That was obviously not realistic. Besides, she had robbed the Lan family of a lot of money back then. Some of the Lan family members might still see her as an enemy. Chapter 26-28, You have an opinion? 1. It's not entirely the Lan family. Lan Lai said, a little embarrassed. His heart was in a deep dilemma. He only had feelings for certain members of the Lan family, and these people were enough to influence his thoughts of staying in the Lan family. I understand, Leng Ruoxue patted Lan Lai's shoulder to show her understanding. Hearing this, Lan Lai became even more depressed. Woo! How he wished he could be as carefree as Shuer. However, with his family dragging him down, that idea was clearly an impossible dream. Lan Lai, who had returned to his room after his conversation with Leng Ruoxue, was deeply worried. At that moment, a middle-aged man pushed the door open and entered. Lan Lai quickly stood up and greeted him respectfully, Old Ancestor. Sit down. That girl was Leng Ruoxue. The Leng family sent a letter to us because of her. As soon as the middle-aged man sat down, questions shot at Lan Lai like a cannon. Lan Lai didn't know which one to answer first. After some thought, Lan Lai nodded. She is Leng Ruoxue. As for whether the Leng clan sent us the letter because of her, I'm not sure. Lan Lai knew that Leng Ruoxue was quite famous in the Lan family. This was why the Grand Ancestor, who had not come out of his closed-door cultivation for a long time, had heard of her. However, he was not sure if the Grand Ancestor would make things difficult for her because of what Shuer had done to the Lan family in the past. However, he knew very well that if the Grand Ancestor made things difficult for Leng Ruoxue would definitely not be the one to suffer. After some thought, Lan Lai couldn't help but remind him, Ancestor, Shuer has just returned from the divine realm. The reason why he said this was because he hoped that the old ancestor would not act rashly. After all, Shuer was someone who had gone to the divine world. She was so powerful that even the old ancestor would not be a match for her. I know, the middle-aged man nodded, then turned to the serious-looking Lan Lai. Don't worry, I won't cause trouble for that girl because of what happened in the past. Some people in the Lan family are blind, so you can't blame anyone else. Lan Lai was relieved to hear that. In reality, even if he had not reminded her, this Lan family's old grandmadam clearly had no intention of making things difficult for Leng Ruoxue. He was not a fool with no judgment. From the Leng family's attitude towards Leng Ruoxue, he knew that this little girl was not to be trifled with. Moreover, to be able to go to the divine realm and return safely, this in itself also showed that this girl was a capable person. Everyone had to respect the strong. In just a short meeting, the Lan family's old ancestor had identified Leng Ruoxue as a powerful cultivator. Now, that powerful cultivator was willing to interact with them on an equal footing without putting on any airs. He believed that this was all due to Lan Lai's efforts. The Lan family's old ancestor glanced at Lan Lai and couldn't help but say enviously, "You've made a good friend, liar. You have to get along well with him." "Yes, I will." Lan Lai nodded blankly. He thought to himself, would he dare to not get along well with Shuer? That girl was fierce. He was no match for him, and he knew his own limits. After saying this, the Lan family's old ancestor turned around and left in relief. Lan Lai was still at a loss as he watched his ancestor leave. What was this situation? Did old grandmadam come to his room just to tell him to get along well with Shuer? This was such a fantasy. Lan Lai didn't understand, so he stopped thinking about it. At the same time, the parasol tree that was sitting in the snow garden smiled at Leng Ruoxue and said, "That Lan clan's old ancestor is quite self-aware." What? Leng Ruoxue did not understand the mother parasol tree's words and could only look at her with a puzzled expression. Ha ha ha. The Lan family's ancestor told Lan Lai to get along with you. He must have noticed that you're not ordinary. The mother parasol tree smiled slyly. Thanks. Leng Ruoxue was speechless when she heard this. In fact, she wanted to say that she had made many great achievements in Haotian continent, and it was not a big deal that some people were still afraid of her. But looking at the mother parasol tree, it was obviously very surprised. Then, she heard the mother parasol tree say, "Little girl, it seems that no matter where you are always restless." Was this a compliment? "Senior, I'm very well behaved," Leng Ruoxue said, feeling wronged. "All right. You're so well behaved that you've already made everyone tremble in fear." Ha ha ha. The mother parasol tree laughed evilly. Hearing her words, Leng Ruoxue could only feel helpless. However, she could not deny that the mother parasol tree's words made no sense. AI. This fact made her quite depressed. The mother parasol tree could tell that Leng Ruoxue was a little depressed, so it stopped teasing her. However, it was rare for the parasol tree to see such an expression on Leng Ruoxue's face, so it still laughed unkindly. In the next few days, the representatives of the major forces arrived one after another. After they had moved into the Leng family's guest house, the representatives of the various forces had communicated with each other in private. Although they knew that the Leng family had invited them here to discuss the matter of Sun Tao and the others, they did not know how they would discuss it. With a hint of curiosity, after waiting for a few more days, the representatives of the major forces finally arrived. After everyone was gathered, Leng Shaoqing personally went to look for Leng Ruoxue to inform her of the matter. When Leng Ruoxue heard that the representatives of the various major factions had arrived, she requested Leng Shaoqing to arrange for all the representatives to attend the meeting in the meeting hall 3 days later. Even though Leng Shaoqing did not understand why Leng Ruoxue had arranged for the meeting to be held 3 days later, he still immediately sent someone to inform the various major representatives of this news. After he left, the mother parasol tree asked Leng Ruoxue with a puzzled look, "Shuer, why is the meeting only 3 days later? Isn't it better to solve the problem earlier?" "Senior, you don't understand the evil nature of humans. If we hold a meeting immediately, some people will think that we urgently need them to express their stance. I set the meeting 3 days later to let them know that this matter is not urgent for us at all." Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly. Humans are indeed cunning. When the mother parasol tree heard this, it said fearfully, "I can't help it. There are too many people in this world who want to get something without working." Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly. "That's true. Shuer, you have to think about it before the meeting. There will definitely be people who will object to your proposal." The mother parasol tree could not help but remind him. "Don't worry, I've already thought about it," Leng Ruoxue said confidently. And these 3 days were an unspeakable torment for the major forces. They had thought that once they arrived at the Leng family's residence, the other party would eagerly tell them the plan. Who knew that the other party wasn't in a hurry at all, and the Leng family members even acted as if nothing had happened and did what they had to do. As a result, many representatives couldn't keep their cool anymore. They couldn't figure out what the Leng family was thinking. The 3 days passed by like a year for the representatives of the major forces. The meeting was held in the largest chamber of the Leng family. After the various representatives took their respective seats according to the size of their respective factions, they all turned their gazes toward Leng Shaoqing, who was sitting at the main seat. Chapter 26-29, You Have an Opinion? 2. Leng Shaoqing coughed twice. He was not used to being the center of attention for a moment. However, he was a superior after all, so he quickly adjusted his depressed state of mind and said to the people present with a serious look, "I know that everyone is very anxious about this meeting. Let's officially start the meeting now." After he finished his opening remarks, he gave Leng Xiaoxiao a look. Leng Xiaoxiao nodded and said, "Everyone, I've invited you here today to discuss how to deal with Sun Tao and his group. Senior, if you have something to say, you can just say it." The Lan family's old ancestor said sensibly after hearing Leng Xiaoxiao's words. He knew that the two brothers had been building the business for a long time, and what they said would definitely not satisfy all the forces. Moreover, he wanted to befriend the Leng family, so he naturally had to help them at this time. "Yup. Senior, if you have any good ideas, just tell us. If it's feasible, we won't object." Another representative immediately expressed his opinion. Leng Xiaoxiao frowned when he heard this. He thought to himself, if my method was so easy to open up, would I still need to be so conflicted? To be honest, he had never asked someone for such a thing so directly in his life. Generally speaking, even if there were some transactions between the major forces, most of them would be rather subtle. But now, what he wanted to say was, if you want to deal with Sun Tao, you just have to pay a certain reward. He really couldn't bring himself to say such words. Just as Leng Xiaoxiao was in a dilemma, a light and crisp voice was heard in the meeting hall. "I can help you deal with Sun Tao, but you have to pay me a certain amount." Along with the voice, 2 extremely beautiful women entered. Among these forces, most of them had only heard of Leng Ruoxue's name. Not many of them had seen her in person. Therefore, many of them were shocked and surprised by the arrival of these 2 stunning beauties. When someone saw Leng Ruoxue and the mother parasol tree, he immediately said, "You? Do you know how many powerhouses Sun Tao has around him? Even if all of us join forces, we don't dare to say that we can deal with Sun Tao. Do you think a weak woman like you can deal with Sun Tao and the others?" The person who spoke had never met Leng Ruoxue before. However, Leng Ruoxue was not angry after hearing his words. Instead, she smiled and said, "In the entire Haotian continent, if even I can't deal with Sun Tao, then there's really no one who can do anything to him. Do you believe me?" "I don't believe it." The man was very honest. "It doesn't matter if you don't believe it, as long as someone does." Leng Ruoxue smiled and turned to the others, "Trust me, as long as you pay me a certain amount of money, you'll be able to deal with Sun Tao." "How do you want to deal with Sun Tao and the rest?" The Lan family's old ancestor could not help but ask curiously. He naturally believed in Leng Ruoxue's strength, so he really wanted to know how Leng Ruoxue would deal with Sun Tao. All the powerhouses in the Haotian continent could not do anything to Sun Tao. If Leng Ruoxue did not give an explanation, it would not be easy to earn the reward. "That will depend on how many of you are willing to ask me for help. If all the forces have hired me, I'll naturally exterminate you and return peace to the Haotian continent. However, if only a portion of the forces have such a request, then I will only guarantee the safety of the forces that are paying the reward. As for the other forces, they can only hope for the best. Leng Ruoxue chuckled lightly. Thanks, her words were very clear, and the major forces also understood. What the other party meant was that if she wanted to get rid of Sun Tao, all the major forces on the Haotian continent had to pay. Otherwise, she would only care about the safety of the forces who paid. In that case, the other forces would naturally be in a worse situation than now. Ruthless. How ruthless. It was obvious that he wanted all the forces to hire her. Otherwise, those forces that were reluctant to spend money would definitely suffer from Sun Tao's violent revenge, and the consequences would naturally be imaginable. At the thought of this, someone asked about Leng Ruoxue's remuneration out of concern. 50% of all the assets of your major forces. Leng Ruoxue calmly stated the number that caused the various major powers to feel heartache. This is too much. Someone immediately objected. The price is clearly stated, and I'm honest. Do as you please. I'm only going for this price anyway. To be honest, I'm giving you a friendly price because I've lived in the Haotian continent for a few years. Leng Ruoxue said indifferently. How many years did he live on the Haotian continent? What was the meaning of this? Some of the more meticulous people immediately grasped the main point of this sentence and secretly discussed it with their companions. I want to know, if we pay, how will you guarantee our safety? Someone asked. Now, everyone in the Haotian continent was in a state of panic. All the major forces were afraid that their territories would be taken over by Sun Tao. Therefore, they had not been able to eat well or sleep well all these years. They had been living like stray dogs all day long in fear, and they did not know when such days would come to an end. More importantly, who knew when the faction they were in would become Sun Tao's? After all, that guy was very ambitious, and the people around him were like fiends, causing unspeakable suffering for their original factions. I've said it before. If you all agree and are willing to give me 50% of your assets as my reward, I will naturally help you get rid of Sun Tao and all his forces. However, this is a treatment that only group purchases get. If someone is unwilling and cannot meet the conditions of the group purchase, I will not do that. As for those who failed to meet the conditions of group purchase and have paid the reward, I will set up a defensive formation outside your territory. With this formation, you naturally don't have to worry about the attack of Sun Tao and the others. Leng Ruoxue replied honestly. A defensive formation? Would that work? I've heard that Luo City already has a defensive formation. Isn't Luo City in Wen Yuan's hands now? A man immediately questioned after hearing Leng Ruoxue's words. He. You're right, Luo City has a defensive formation and Luo City has indeed fallen into Wen Yuan's hands. However, the fall of Luo City had nothing to do with the formation. Leng Ruoxue said coldly. What does that have to do with? A traitor? The man sneered. It was no secret in the Haotian continent that there was a traitor in the Luo family and that he had led the wolf into the house. However, what he said at this time seemed to be a slap to the Luo family's face. The grand elder of the Luo family, who was sitting in the middle of the crowd, felt his face burn as he listened to the other party's words. Then, he stood up from his seat and said loudly, That's right. There's a traitor in the Luo family, and that's why we're in such a state. I want to remind everyone to be careful of the traitor. Otherwise, it's useless no matter how good your defense is. Well said. The Lan clan's old ancestor agreed with these words. However, some people were still looking for trouble. The man from before continued to provoke them. There's a traitor in the Luo family, and they've fallen from their status as a top family. I wonder if your master knows about this. She couldn't have forgotten about you guys on the Haotian continent, could she? Chapter 26:30, You have an opinion? 3. What are you talking about? Master will never forget us. The grand elder of the Luo family roared. Ever since the fall of the Luo family, Leng Ruoxue, who was behind the Luo family, had been exposed by someone. Therefore, the entire Hautian continent now knew that Leng Ruoxue was their backer. As the Grand Elder of the Luo family, he could not allow someone to use his master as an excuse. Yo! You really called me master? The man said with a proud smile. So what if you call me master? She's the master of the Luo family. Moreover, master's standards are very high, not just anyone can acknowledge him as their master. The Grand Elder of the Luo family said proudly. I say, old man Luo, you've really lost the face of the strong. You've acknowledged a woman as your master, yet you're still so smug. Even if you don't find it embarrassing, I'm flustered on your behalf. The man said with a look of disdain. You can say whatever you want about me, but you can't insult my master. Seeing that the person who spoke was obviously looking down on women, the Grand Elder of the Luo family was so furious that he could not hold back his anger. However, when Leng Ruoxue gave him a look that told him to calm down, the Grand Elder of the Luo family miraculously calmed down in the eyes of others and obediently returned to his seat. When the man saw this, he thought that the other party had retreated. Just as he was secretly pleased with himself, he suddenly felt the pressure behind him increase. When he turned around, Leng Ruoxue was already standing behind him. What are you doing? The man's heart trembled for no reason, and his voice trembled. He didn't know why, but this woman gave him so much pressure. This was definitely not normal. Don't be afraid. I just want to ask you something. From what you're saying, you seem to have a lot of complaints about the master of the Luo family. Leng Ruoxue's smile was rather amiable, but her gentle smile caused the other party's heart to palpitate in fear. The other party did not even know what he was afraid of. Of course. Acknowledging a woman as his master, this is simply a disgrace to the strong. When the man heard this, he immediately gathered his courage and said. Then what kind of master should I acknowledge so that you won't feel that I'm losing face for the strong? Sun Tao. Leng Ruoxue squinted her eyes and said in a sharp tone. What Sun Tao? Don't you spout nonsense. When the man heard the name Sun Tao, he was so scared that his little heart was pounding. He looked at the people around him with an uneasy expression. Seeing that they did not have much reaction to the woman's words, he was slightly relieved. Whether I'm talking nonsense or not, you should know in your heart. However, it's none of my business who you acknowledge as your master, but it's my business that you bully my subordinates. Leng Ruoxue laughed coldly as she grabbed the man's collar and pulled him in front of her like a little chick. Who bullied your subordinate? Don't you slander me. Everyone's eyes were watching. You can't wrong me. The man immediately cried out his innocence. Why was this woman's aura so strong? He felt like he was about to suffocate. This feeling was really uncomfortable. I've wronged you, do I need to? Oh right, I forgot to tell you, I am the master of the Luo family, Leng Ruoxue. Do you have any objections? Leng Ruoxue said with a smile that was not a smile. When the first elder of the Luo family heard this, he was like a proud rooster as he held his head high and puffed out his chest. He was extremely pleased with himself. The moment he heard Leng Ruoxue's name, the man, who was full of fighting spirit, instantly wilted. He asked carefully, You're really Leng Ruoxue? Aren't you in the divine realm? Why did you appear in the Hautian continent? He. Do you think that someone would dare to impersonate my name? I was in the divinity, but I heard that someone in the Hautian continent was bullying my subordinates, so I came back to take a look. Do you have a problem with that? Leng Ruoxue smiled as she retorted. No objections. The man immediately said, his entire body covered in cold sweat. Woo! Why was he so unlucky to have bumped into Leng Ruoxue? If he had known that the beauty in front of him was Leng Ruoxue, he would not have dared to bring up this killing god. Even though he had never met Leng Ruoxue in person, he had heard all of her past deeds by heart. This person was definitely not easy to get along with. I heard that she's also a killing god in the divine realm. At this moment, the man was filled with regret. Leng Ruoxue, who he had thought would not appear in the Hautian continent, had appeared without a trace. What should he do? He didn't know if he would be able to return alive this time. You really don't have any objections? Leng Ruoxue asked, seemingly worried. I really didn't. Ancestor, treat what I just said as a fart and let it go. I don't dare to speak nonsense again, really. I promise. The man begged for mercy. But what if I have some opinions about you? Leng Ruoxue said with a conflicted expression. The man was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. He couldn't understand why a big shot like Leng Ruoxue would keep harping on him when he was just a minor character. This was definitely not something an expert would do. Absolutely not. Thanks, Ancestor, I truly know that I'm in the wrong. Can you be magnanimous and spare me? The man continued to plead, and his fawning appearance made everyone look down on him. However, at this moment, the man couldn't care much. Saving his little life was the most important thing. How much is self-respect worth? There's a saying that only women and villains are difficult to raise. I don't know if you've heard of it. So you think he'll let you go? I'm sorry, I've never been generous. Leng Ruoxue immediately rejected the other party's suggestion. Ancestor, I know I'm wrong. What do you want me to do to make you let me go? The man said with a long face. It's simple. Tell me about your master. I'm very interested in him. Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly. The man trembled when he heard this. He couldn't even form a complete sentence. Don't tell me you don't have a master. Leng Ruoxue warned indifferently and released some pressure. The man's face instantly turned pale, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. In the end, he couldn't bear the powerful pressure and cried, Woo! I have a master, I've turned to Sun Tao. After the other party had finished speaking, Leng Ruoxue threw him on the ground and stood at the side as if nothing had happened. When everyone heard this, their faces changed. They did not expect Sun Tao and his group to not only take over the territories of many forces, but also cultivate spies. For a moment, everyone looked at the people around them with distrusting eyes. They could not be sure that there was no one around them who had been bribed by Sun Tao. Once such a thought appeared, it was like a wildfire that started a prairie fire, and they could not suppress it no matter what. Looking at the distrusting expressions of the crowd, Leng Ruoxue could not help but sneer. This was the fragile trust in human nature. The atmosphere in the meeting hall was strangely heavy. After a long time, someone finally reacted and looked at Leng Ruoxue with a burning gaze. Senior, what should we do now? I told you. Leng Ruoxue didn't want to repeat her words. The Lan family is willing to accept your conditions. At this time, the Lan family's old ancestor took the lead and said. To him, money was just a worldly possession. Protecting the Lan family's status was the most important thing. You won't regret this. Leng Ruoxue was very satisfied with the tactfulness of the Lan family's old ancestor and spoke in a very friendly manner. The Lan family's old ancestor nodded at Leng Ruoxue as well. Both parties had reached a preliminary agreement. With the Lan family taking the lead, the factions that knew Leng Ruoxue's strength were naturally willing to pay a certain price. They only hoped that they would not be harassed by Sun Tao and the rest. Of course, it would be even better if they could get rid of Sun Tao and the rest. However, from the looks of it now, not all the factions had agreed to the other party's conditions. The other party would obviously not do that. This fact made them very sad. However, they were well aware that Leng Ruoxue was not someone who could be manipulated by others. When Leng Ruoxue saw that things were almost done, she left the meeting hall with the parasol tree mother tree. She left the rest of the matters to Leng Shaoqing and his brother. The two of them had completely become Leng Ruoxue's coolies, but they still looked like they were willing to do so. This was because this was definitely a good start for their relationship with Leng Ruoxue. After signing the contract with the various factions that had agreed to Leng Ruoxue's conditions, they brought the contract to Leng Ruoxue. Flipping through the thick contract, Leng Ruoxue nodded in satisfaction. Not bad, 2/3 of the factions had agreed to her conditions. As for the remaining 1/3, most of them were still hesitating. Hence, the Lin brothers gave the factions a few days to discuss this matter seriously. Fortunately, the representatives of the major forces who came this time were all masters of the family. Otherwise, this matter would have been delayed even longer. Many of the major powers that had agreed to Lin Ruoxiu's conditions were urging them to take action as soon as possible. After telling Lin Ruoxiu that some forces hoped that Lin Ruoxiu would quickly set up a defensive formation for her clan, Lin Shaoqing and Lin Xiaoxiao remained silent. Lin Ruoxiu did not say anything. The atmosphere immediately became tense. After a long while, Lin Ruoxiu smiled faintly and said, "They would rather I set up a defensive formation for them?" "Shuai, what do you mean? Didn't you say that yourself?" Lin Shaoqing asked when he heard that. He was about to be confused by Lin Ruoxiu. "Don't you want to set up a defensive formation for them?" Lin Xiaoxiao replied in confusion as well. However, it was clear that his tolerance for Lin Ruoxiu's words was much higher than his elder brother's. Hence, his mind was still clear and he felt that Lin Ruoxiu's words definitely had a deeper meaning. As for the deeper meaning, he did not know. Chapter 2631, Layout, 1. It's not that I don't want to, but it's too troublesome to set up a defensive formation for each family. As a result, it will take at least a year and a half to complete it, so I'm more inclined to help them get rid of Sun Tao, the root of their disaster. That'll save us a lot of trouble. Lin Ruoxiu smiled as she glanced at Lin Shaoqing and Lin Xiaoxiao before she spoke. When the two heard this, they felt that it really made sense. However, not all the forces had signed the contract. They couldn't force all the forces to sign the contract, right? Instantly, the two of them were at a loss. Looking at the two's gloomy expressions, Lin Ruoxiu smiled and asked, "What kind of forces are those who haven't signed a contract?" "Most of them are from small and medium-sized forces. They are not rich to begin with and are short-sighted, so they are simply reluctant to pay this reward." Lin Shaoqing explained helplessly. If it were the major factions, they would be more willing to pay. This was because the top factions basically had no doubts about Lin Ruoxiu's strength. However, the small and mid-sized factions were not well informed, so they did not know much about Shuai's strength. Naturally, they were not willing to pay this reward so easily. In my opinion, it's not that those small and medium-sized forces are short-sighted and can't bear to fork out this sum of money. They're just too scheming. After hearing Lin Xiaoqing's words, Lin Ruoxiu could not help but sneer. "You're saying that they think they can take advantage of us? That's why you haven't agreed?" Lin Shaoqing understood what was going on the moment he heard that. Thinking about it carefully, it seemed to be possible. But hadn't Shuai already made it clear? If not all the forces had hired her, she would not have done anything to Sun Tao and the others. Why were there still forces holding on to the hope of getting lucky? AI. In this world, there were always some people who would not shed tears until they saw the coffin. Lin Shaoqing was having a headache over those people's petty thoughts. He didn't know what to do. Lin Ruoxiu nodded and smiled. "Are those forces still in the city?" "Yes, they are still staying in the Lin clan's guest house." Lin Shaoqing replied honestly. "From now on, ask them to leave the Lin family." Lin Ruoxiu said after some thought. "This isn't very good, is it? They're all guests invited by the Lin family, and it's impolite to invite them out. It might affect the reputation of our Lin family if word gets out." Lin Shaoqing said hesitantly. Why would a super force like the Lin family care about the opinions of some small and medium-sized forces? After Lin Ruoxiu heard Lin Xiaoqing's words, she felt that it was rather laughable. There's no other way. I'd rather offend a gentleman than a villain. Some of those small and medium-sized forces don't have a good reputation. If we offend them, we might pour some dirty water on the Lin family. It's a critical time now, and it's not good to make too many enemies, or it will affect the Lin family's reputation in the Haotian continent. Lin Shaoqing said helplessly. Don't forget that the Lin family is about to leave the Haotian continent. Why would they care about their reputation? Leng Ruoxue reminded him calmly. Ah. Leng Shaoqing was a little embarrassed. How could he have forgotten such an important matter? They were about to leave the Haotian continent and would never come back. In that case, why should he care about what those small and medium-sized forces thought? With that thought in mind, Leng Shaoqing quickly said to Leng Ruoxue, "I'll ask them to leave the Leng family now." Those people were obviously treating the Leng family as a safe haven now. The Leng family really had no obligation to provide for them for free. Leng Shaoqing then turned around and left to handle the matter. Leng Xiaoxiao had wanted to tag along, but he was asked to stay by Leng Ruoxue alone. Looking at Leng Ruoxue, Leng Xiaoxiao was very uncertain as to why this little girl had asked him to stay behind. He immediately felt uneasy. Thanks, Leng Ruoxue could not help but chuckle when she saw that Leng Xiaoxiao was a little ill at ease. "Are you very afraid of me?" "Ah. I'm not afraid." Leng Xiaoxiao braced himself and said, "No matter what, I'm still this little girl's ancestor in terms of bloodline. How embarrassing would it be if I were to admit that I'm afraid of her? I can't admit it. I can't admit it." However, no matter how much he consoled himself in his heart, his expression still revealed his nervousness, and cold sweat oozed out of his forehead. Damn it! Why did this little girl give off so much pressure? Seeing that he was being stubborn, Leng Ruoxue did not expose him. Instead, she waved at Leng Xiaoxiao, who immediately walked towards her like an obedient puppy. He whispered a few words into Leng Xiaoxiao's ear, and Leng Xiaoxiao's face revealed a hint of surprise. She then looked at Leng Ruoxue with an inexplicable expression. She thought to herself, "No matter who I offend in this world, I can't offend this little girl. Will this work?" Leng Xiaoxiao said with a hint of uncertainty after he heard that. "This is just a strategy. Believe me, it will succeed," Leng Ruoxue said confidently. "All right. I'll make the arrangements," Leng Xiaoxiao said with a nod. He knew that he could not reject this at all. Even though this girl had told him this in private, she was just giving him an order. She would not give him a chance to reject her at all. Sigh. He accepted his fate. However, after some thought, Leng Xiaoxiao could not help but ask curiously, "Why did you ask me to handle this matter?" What he meant was, why didn't he tell his big brother? "You don't look like a pedantic and rule-abiding person. You're the most suitable person to handle this kind of thing." Leng Ruoxue gave Leng Xiaoxiao an answer. However, Leng Xiaoxiao did not know if he should be happy or worried after hearing this. Why did this little girl's words not sound like a compliment? However, it seemed that he could only take it as a compliment. Otherwise, he would be depressed to death. After he found out the reason why Leng Ruoxue had looked for him, Leng Xiaoxiao left the falling snow garden with a heavy heart. As soon as he left, the mother parasol tree, who was watching from the side, immediately laughed evilly and said with a look of understanding, "Girl, you're asking him to do bad things, right? It's not a bad thing. It's just a small strategy," Leng Ruoxue said innocently. "All right. It's definitely not a good thing," the mother parasol tree sighed. "Hee hee. Senior, let's just be tactful. There's no need to say this kind of thing." Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly. "That's true. But Shuer, the guest house is quite lively now, aren't you going to take a look?" the mother parasol tree said with a mysterious look. Looking at the mother parasol tree's gloating expression, Leng Ruoxue knew that this bored plant-level ancestor had used his divine sense to investigate the Leng family again. Every time he encountered something fun, the other party would be eager to share it with her. "Since Senior wants to see it, let's go and take a look." Leng Ruoxue did not have to guess to know what the mother parasol tree was referring to. Seeing how eager she was to try, she did not object to it. After that, the two of them walked towards the guest courtyard. At this moment, the guest courtyard was filled with people. There were representatives from various major forces who were here to watch the show, and there were also people involved. They were the representatives from the forces who had yet to sign the employment contract with Leng Ruoxue and had been invited out of the Leng family's guest courtyard by Leng Xiaoqing. Those people had already surrounded the Leng clan's members, led by Leng Xiaoqing, and were strongly demanding that the Leng clan give them an explanation. On what basis were they being asked to leave the Leng clan's guest courtyard? They didn't want to leave. Although the Leng family didn't ask them to leave the city was safer than the Leng family. They were also treated to good food and drink, so they were even more unwilling to leave. Chapter 2632, Scheme 2, Leng family's ancestor, we respect you as our senior, but you can't rely on the Leng family's power to look down on small forces like us, right? All the forces on the Haotian continent have always followed the Leng family's lead. If it weren't for us, the small and medium-sized forces, who supported the Leng family so much, how could the Leng family have such a high status on the Haotian continent? But now, your Leng clan's actions have really disappointed us. A middle-aged man criticized in an unusually agitated manner. He was so angry that his face and neck turned red. His words naturally received the support of many small factions. Because this person had said something that none of them dared to say. Leng Xiaoqing was so angry that the veins on his forehead were throbbing. He was a little regretful that he had been too polite to them before. These people had thought that the Leng family would not dare to drive them away because of their pride. Now, the Leng family was accused of bullying others. If it were not for the fact that the Leng family was about to leave the Haotian continent, it would take a lot more effort for the Leng family to recover their former reputation. But now, he really didn't care. They were about to retort, but before Leng Xiaoqing could say anything, an icy-cold female voice rang in their ears. What's wrong with using your power to bully others? Don't you need the capital to bully others? Leng Ruoxue walked over leisurely. The people on both sides who were watching the show couldn't help but make way for her. When he saw Leng Ruoxue, Leng Xiaoqing heaved a huge sigh of relief. By the time she finished speaking, Leng Ruoxue had already walked to the front of the middle-aged man and continued to ask, "Do you think him right?" The middle-aged man who had been very brave when he was facing Leng Xiaoqing earlier suddenly felt the pressure on his body increase. He stuttered and could not speak. Seeing his reaction, Leng Ruoxue sneered, "After seeing you today, I finally understand why it's easier to invite a god than to send him away. We've already finished our discussion, but you're still staying in the Leng family. Do you want the Leng family to support you, or do you want to join the Leng family and become its subsidiary?" With that, Leng Ruoxue did not give the middle-aged man and the rest a chance to speak. She turned to Leng Xiaoqing and asked, "Does the Leng family still accept affiliated families?" "I won't accept it," Leng Xiaoqing replied without even thinking. At the same time, she could not help but chuckle to herself. This girl was really something. With just a few words, the guy who was making a lot of noise just now had run out of battery. Woo! When he compared the two, he suddenly felt that he was too useless. He couldn't even handle such a small matter. He felt very inferior. Did you guys hear that? The Leng family is not accepting any affiliated families now, so please leave the Leng family as soon as possible. Of course, if you don't want to leave, you can also stay in the inn in the Ao Han city, and pay for your own expenses. Leng Ruoxue had made her words very clear. When the crowd heard her words, their faces turned even uglier. In fact, those people knew it was time to leave, but most of the small and medium-sized forces had brought many clansmen and subordinates to the proud cold city, and they were all elites of their forces. On the surface, those people wanted to be safe, but in fact, they wanted to stay in the Leng family to preserve their strength so that they would not be completely annihilated when they were attacked by Sun Tao. According to their thinking, since a super force like the Leng family had invited them here, they would not easily drive away the guests. As such, even though the discussion was almost over, they still had no intention of leaving. However, it seemed that these people had miscalculated. The original Leng family might not have chased these people away for the sake of their reputation, but Leng Ruoxue did not care about that. In her eyes, since these people were not considered her clients, they naturally did not have the right to stay in the Leng family after the matter was settled. They would also be served by the Leng family with good food and drink. If they wanted to treat the Leng family as a safe haven, they would have to see if he agreed. With her in the Leng family, it was impossible to support these idlers. Thanks, why are they allowed to stay here? The middle-aged man, who had finally managed to adjust his state of mind, pointed at the other factions who were watching the show when he heard Leng Ruoxu's direct order to leave. When the other forces saw that the other party wanted to drag them into the water, they couldn't help but hate the middle-aged man. Many people even cursed in their hearts. This is obviously your business, and the Leng family didn't drive them away, so why are you still holding on to them? They're my clients, so they don't have to leave. Of course, if you become my customers, you don't need to leave. However, you are not. So, please leave quickly. Leng Ruoxue said coldly. Can you not be so realistic? Are you going to drive us away if we don't become your customers? When the middle-aged man heard this, he immediately became excited and shouted. He felt that he had gotten hold of something that could be used against Leng Ruoxue. If such words were heard by the powers who were in the same boat as him, it would definitely resonate with them. This way, everyone would be even more united. Moreover, the middle-aged man believed that no one would not care about their reputation and would not care about being criticized in public. It was a pity that even though his idea was good, he had met Leng Ruoxue. Leng Ruoxue wasn't one of those sanctimonious fellows. To her, reputation wasn't a big deal. She didn't care about other people's opinions and only wanted to follow her heart and do things her way. It had to be said that there were many people who wanted to do this. However, not everyone had the confidence and ability that Leng Ruoxue had. Thus, Leng Ruoxue's casual actions would naturally be criticized by many people. However, she did not care. What's wrong with reality? Could it be that I'm kind by taking care of you people even though you're not my customers? May I ask what my kindness can be exchanged for? Leng Ruoxue smiled faintly and asked with a face full of doubt. You can earn our respect. The middle-aged man thought for a moment and quickly said in a righteous manner. Hee hee. I've always heard that only the strong are respected in this world. I didn't expect to hear another version today, where kindness is respected. Let me ask you, if I'm a complete mess of kindness and my strength is 0, I wonder what kind of treatment I'll receive. Leng Ruoxue continued to ask curiously. The middle-aged man was speechless again. What, you can't say it? Since you're speechless, then don't talk about kindness anymore. Kindness also depends on who you're being kind to. If I'm kind to people like you who refuse to leave, wouldn't I be asking for trouble? Leng Ruoxue laughed coldly. Men. Send the guests out, whoever refuses to leave, beat them out. Following that, Leng Ruoxue turned around and instructed the Leng family's guards. All the guards quickly responded, and then they all put on a stern face, looking at the middle-aged man and the others with a fierce look. The guards truly felt that Leng Ruoxue's words were more imposing. Now, the other party didn't even dare to say a word. Many people were so scared that they were like chicks that had just come out of their shells, and their bodies began to tremble. Satisfying. It was really satisfying. When they thought of the domineering aura that Leng Ruoxue had exuded, the Leng family's guards all puffed out their chests like roosters who had just won a battle. They felt that they must not weaken Leng Ruoxue's killing god aura. Otherwise, it would be too embarrassing. Chapter 2633, Scheme 3. With this thought in mind, the guards would no longer be polite to those who refused to leave. As such, those people were a little afraid and all looked at the middle-aged man in unison. The middle-aged man was helpless and could only bite the bullet and say, Wait. Wait a minute. We didn't say we wouldn't hire you. It's such a big matter. Can you give us a few days to think about it? Alright, I'll give you 3 days. After 3 days, those who haven't signed a contract with me, please leave the Leng family. Otherwise, I'll send people to chase you away. It won't look good then. Leng Ruoxue's previous coldness was gone as she smiled. After she finished speaking, she turned around and left, just like how she had come. The moment Leng Ruoxue left, most of the people present heaved a sigh of relief. Some of them were already drenched in cold sweat, and their clothes were mostly wet. It was clear how much pressure Leng Ruoxue had put on them. Back at the snow garden, the mother parasol tree could not help but ask curiously, "Shuer, why are you giving them 3 days? After 3 days, some people might not be willing to pay you so much to hire you." "I know. I gave them 3 days to make them think it through. After all, my goal is for all forces to agree to my conditions, not to be like a bull, exhausted to the point of setting up a defensive array for them." Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly. "Ah. I hope you can succeed." The mother parasol tree was not optimistic about the remaining forces. It should be known that most of the forces that had not signed a contract with Shuer were greedy, selfish and petty. It was good enough that they did not want to take advantage of the situation. How could they be willing to share half of their assets with others? Wouldn't that be the same as taking their lives? Leng Ruoxue smiled but did not say anything. 3 days passed by in a flash. Leng Xiaoqing came to see Leng Ruoxue with joy on his face and went straight to the point. "Shuer, among the remaining forces, a small number of them have signed contracts with us. Those who have not signed contracts have also left the Leng family." "Your words are more powerful." Leng Xiaoqing admired Leng Ruoxue a lot. When it was time to be ruthless, she was more ruthless than anyone else. When it was time to be gentle, she was equally irresistible. However, not everyone had the right to see this little girl's tender side. At least, he had never seen it before. Now, when Leng Ruoxue faced the Leng family, she still had a faint and distant expression on her face. He was rather helpless about this. "You didn't leave the city?" Leng Ruoxue asked indifferently. "No. It's strange. Those forces are staying in the inn in the Ao Han city. Don't they want to go back to their original forces?" Leng Xiaoqing asked with a puzzled look. "Are those guys really thinking of using this place as a safe haven? Before we leave the Haotian continent, the Leng family will have a chance to make a fortune. Don't be shy about charging them, because they will need a lot of money in the divine world." Leng Ruoxue reminded him with a faint smile. "Don't worry, I won't let go of the chance to slaughter a fat sheep." Leng Xiaoqing laughed with a tacit understanding. "Oh right, there's one more thing. Those forces that have signed a contract with us are asking me when I'm going to set up a defensive formation for them." Leng Xiaoqing added after some thought. "Tell them to calm down. I will arrange this." Leng Ruoxue nodded. "I think some forces can't wait any longer." Leng Xiaoqing reminded with a faint smile. "Well, still have to let them wait. I only signed a contract with them and didn't take their money. What are they rushing me for?" Leng Ruoxue was a little unhappy. It was really hard to earn money these days. However, she wouldn't pamper her client. She had the initiative. "I think those people think that since you've signed a contract with them, you have an obligation to ensure their safety. Otherwise, why would they be willing to pay you half of their assets so easily?" At this moment, the mother parasol tree, who had been silent all this while, said with a smirk. "I only signed a contract of intent with them. It means that they're willing to pay half of their assets to hire me. As for when they'll take action, it's up to me. Moreover, I won't charge them a single cent if I don't finish my work. So, in fact, our employment relationship is not really established." Leng Ruoxue explained. "Ah. If those forces were to know what you said, they would most likely think that you are toying with them." The mother parasol tree broke out in cold sweat and could not help but ask. "I'm not playing with them. I just want to use a more convenient way to achieve my goal." Leng Ruoxue said lightly. If the parasol tree and Leng Xiaoqing still did not understand, then they would be really stupid. Hence, the two of them could not help but shed tears of sympathy for those who had fallen into Shuer's trap. Thanks at the same time, they rejoiced that Shuer was not scheming against them, or else they would have been depressed to death. In the next few days, a piece of news spread to the city of Prideful Frost. All of a sudden, the people in the city were in a panic. Especially those forces that were related to the news. They were so scared that their faces turned as pale as paper. This was because the news said that the faction they were in had been attacked by Sun Tao and no longer existed. This news was too shocking. Although only a few of the small and medium-sized forces were attacked, Sun Tao and the others had not made a move for a long time. Now that they had made a move again, the meaning was self-evident. When the various factions found out about this news, they were like ants on a hot pan. They were so anxious that they were going in circles. Some people even strongly requested that Leng Ruoxue immediately set up an array formation for their factions. Although most of the factions had such thoughts, the people in charge of some of the major factions were still calm. They knew that they had to remain calm at times like this. They couldn't force Leng Ruoxue because of such a matter. Otherwise, if she were to shirk her responsibilities in a fit of anger, wouldn't they be the ones to suffer? It could be said that it was because of their calmness that Leng Ruoxue was satisfied with their performance and had summoned them in private. When the representatives of the top forces saw that they weren't the only ones invited by Leng Ruoxue, they couldn't help but feel puzzled. However, they were smart enough not to say anything and patiently waited for Leng Ruoxue to speak first. Leng Ruoxue knew that even though the few of them looked calm on the surface, they must be very surprised that she had asked them to come. Thus, she did not beat around the bush and said directly, "I've called you here in private to discuss something. May I know why you're looking for us?" A representative of a top force couldn't help but ask. "I want to ask you about your plans for the future," Leng Ruoxue said indifferently. The few of them did not understand and all of them looked at Leng Ruoxue, waiting for her to continue. "Do you want to hide in your own territory, or do you want to become a super force on the Haotian continent?" Leng Ruoxue asked casually as if her words were as simple as asking what they were having for dinner. However, the expressions of the representatives of the top forces changed drastically when they heard this. Was Leng Ruoxue testing them? Were they afraid that they would fight with the Leng family or the Luo family? In fact, it was almost every force's biggest dream to become a recognized super family. However, to become a super family, it was not just about having money, power, and territory. It also required a certain foundation and enough reserve talents. A super family like the Leng family had to have at least operated on the Haotian continent for thousands of years before it could reach its current scale and become a super family on the Haotian continent. However, the Luo family was a special case. Who asked the Luo family to have a powerful master with a strong background that no one else could compare to? Then there was the Lan family, which, like the Leng family, had at least a few thousand years of history. None of the top forces present could compare to these three families. Hence, when they heard Leng Ruoxue's words, they sensitively felt that Leng Ruoxue thought that they were ambitious and wanted to take advantage of the chaos to fight with these three families. Sob. They were really wronged. The Haotian continent's situation was so bad now. It was not easy to keep his family from being incorporated by Sun Tao, so he did not dare to think about such nonsense. Moreover, with the existence of Sun Tao and the others, the three great families seemed to exist in name only. These three super families with deep roots and strong backings had all been forced to hide in their own territory by Sun Tao. The Luo family had even lost Luo City. Compared to these three families, they were even less presentable. At that moment, the representative of the top forces who thought of this immediately expressed his thoughts to Leng Ruoxue. "Senior Leng, please rest assured. The Leng family, Luo family, and Lan family will forever be the three great families in our hearts. No one can replace their positions. We will not acknowledge anyone else, including Sun Tao and the others." "You really don't want to do it at all?" Leng Ruoxue listened to their confession and said helplessly. These people seemed to have misunderstood her words. "I don't." The representatives of the top forces shouted in unison. "What if I say that the Leng and Luo families are leaving?" Leng Ruoxue exposed. "What?" At this moment, the representatives of the top forces were all stunned. They did not understand what Leng Ruoxue meant. What did he mean by leaving? Where to? When Sun Tao's matter is settled, I will take the Leng family and the Luo family out of the Haotian continent and head to the Divine Realm. By then, the Lan family will be the only super force left on the Haotian continent. Do you understand what I mean? Leng Ruoxue smiled. Chapter 2634, This is Fake. 1. They heard Leng Ruoxue's words clearly, but they still didn't understand what the other party meant. Does Senior mean that you want us to replace the Leng and Luo families? After the representatives of the top forces looked at each other, one of them asked on behalf of the others. That's right. I selected you from all the top forces. The forces you belong to are the strongest among all the top forces on the Haotian continent. That's why I'm willing to tell you my future arrangements in advance. When Sun Tao's matter is over, he'll take the Leng family and the Luo family and leave Haotian continent. At that time, the Lan family will be the only dominant family in Haotian continent. This also means that your chance has come, doesn't it? Leng Ruoxue smiled. Senior, you don't wish for the Lan family to monopolize the world? Hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, another person could not help but ask. Now that Leng Ruoxue's intentions had confused them, they could not figure out what she was trying to do. At the same time, he was afraid that he had expressed the wrong feelings, so he didn't dare to casually reveal his thoughts. He could only choose to ask clearly first. For me, it doesn't matter who is the most powerful in the Haotian continent. I don't care about that. What I'm concerned about is who the Leng and Luo families' territories will belong to after they leave. After Leng Ruoxue finished speaking calmly, she casually picked up the teacup on the table and took a sip of tea. Then, her beautiful eyes turned to the people opposite her. If you're interested in the Luo family, the Leng family, and Wanshan City, I can make the decision to transfer these places to you. Of course, I won't be transferring them for free. You'd better understand this. After a pause, Leng Ruoxue continued. After she finished speaking, the representatives of the top forces finally understood Leng Ruoxue's words. The other party wanted to leave, but she didn't want the territory to go to someone else for no reason. Therefore, she wanted to sell the territory now. However, how much did the other party want to sell this territory for? Could they afford it? The most important thing was that after buying the land of these three families, they would still have to send people to guard this place. Putting aside how much money they would have to spend, if the land they bought was snatched by Sun Tao and the others, who would they cry to then? Thinking about it quickly, the representatives felt a headache. To be honest, the cold city of the Leng family was a good place. The spiritual qi was much richer than that of other cities. Luo City and Wanshan City were both equipped with defensive formations. As long as there were no traitors, their defenses could be considered impenetrable. The territories of these three cities naturally made many forces envious. It could be said that if Leng Ruoxue really left the Haotian continent with her subordinates and the Leng clan, these three territories would definitely become the focus of many forces. However, it was clear that she didn't want to let others take advantage of her territory, which was why she proposed to transfer it. It had to be said that the few people sitting here were very tempted by these three places, but being tempted didn't mean that they dared to buy them. They were even more afraid that they wouldn't be able to hold on to it after they bought it. After all, they didn't have the strength of the Leng family or a strong backing like Leng Ruoxue. In this way, these three treasured lands were of little value to them. However, none of them dared to tell Leng Ruoxue that the three areas were of little value. Otherwise, the person in front of them would definitely go berserk. Hence, after conversing with each other through voice transmission for a long time, a young man then spoke carefully on behalf of a few factions. Senior, we're very interested in the three places you've mentioned. But you've seen the situation in the Haotian continent. Even if we want to buy the three territories you've mentioned, we don't dare to make a move. You guys are worried about Sun Tao. Leng Ruoxue knew the answer. Thanks, the few of them nodded with shame. Sun Tao's return this time had shown them his strength, and they were all shocked. The other party was too strong, even if they joined forces, they were not his opponent. This fact was enough to give them a heavy blow. Therefore, what else could they do other than choosing to hide in a corner? You want to hide from him forever? Leng Ruoxue asked again. What else can we do? We once thought about getting rid of them, but they were too strong. As soon as they came, they attacked the three superpowers first, catching all of us off guard. By the time we reacted, they had already conquered more than half of the territory of the Haotian continent. Even if we wanted to fight back, we couldn't do anything. Thus, we had no choice but to sweep away the snow in front of our own doors, each preserving our strength and shrinking back in our most important territories. If the Leng family didn't send a letter and Sun Tao and the others didn't take a break recently, we wouldn't have dared to walk around the Haotian continent. The young man said honestly. Do you think that hiding in a hole is a long-term plan? Don't think that Sun Tao hasn't made a move on you guys yet, that's because he's already treated you guys like turtles in a jar. He thinks that he can take care of you guys at any time, so you guys aren't afraid of him. But you have to live in fear all day long. How long do you want to live like this? Until the day Sun Tao no longer has the patience to play hide-and-seek with you guys and takes action to deal with you guys? Leng Ruoxue retorted with a face full of disappointment. As long as Senior sets up a formation in our territory, we'll be even safer. Someone said in a low voice. Do you really think you're safe with the formation? Have you forgotten the lesson from the Luo family? Let's put it this way. You might be able to stay in the territory for a year, 2 years, or even 10 years, or even 100 years, but what about 100 years later? Will your people be unable to stand this kind of life? There will be a day when the resources of your families run out. What will you do then? Leng Ruoxue reminded. We, the representatives of the top forces, were speechless after hearing Leng Ruoxue's words. How could they not know that the things Leng Ruoxue had mentioned would become a reality in the future? However, what could they do? Leng Ruoxue was not willing to help them get rid of Sun Tao. Get rid of Sun Tao. The few of them thought of this situation at the same time and hesitated. Finally, the young man opened his mouth and probed, Senior, can you help us get rid of Sun Tao? I've said it before. As long as all the forces in the Haotian continent hire me, it'll help you eliminate this hidden danger. Leng Ruoxue still said the same thing. When the few of them heard this, they were instantly disappointed. If they could get all the forces to hire Leng Ruoxue willingly, would they need to be so conflicted? It was precisely because they could not control the thoughts of other forces that they could only care about themselves. You guys don't have to be so dejected. Didn't Sun Tao attack a few other forces? I think this is a good opportunity for you. Leng Ruoxue chuckled. Senior wants us to hit them while they're down and take the opportunity to recruit them? The young man raised his head and looked at Leng Ruoxue. I'm not that kind of person. Leng Ruoxue pretended to be unhappy after hearing the young man's words. When the people present heard this, they quickly said, no. How could Senior be that kind of person? However, what they thought was completely different from what they said. In their hearts, Leng Ruoxue could not be considered kind. Chapter 2635, This is fake, too, it's good that you know. I just wanted to remind you to do their job. Now is a good time. As long as they sign a contract with me, I'll take care of Sun Tao. Leng Ruoxue promised. Senior, Sun Tao has a lot of people around him. They're almost spread out across the entire Haotian continent. Can you really deal with him alone? The young man asked worriedly. In fact, this was what everyone present wanted to know. I've never put Sun Tao in my eyes. Leng Ruoxue was full of confidence. Since Senior is so confident, we'll definitely try our best to convince the powers that have yet to sign a contract with Senior. The young man promised. Alright, I'll be waiting for your good news. Leng Ruoxue was very satisfied with the way the man in front of her was acting. She gave him a look that said he was a promising child. Senior, we'll take our leave first. The young man said as he stood up. He then turned around and left. Seeing this, the others immediately followed. After they left, the mother parasol tree appeared beside Leng Ruoxue silently and asked curiously, Shuer, do you think they'll be able to see through your intentions? So what if I can? If they really want their clan to become a super clan, they have no other choice. Leng Ruoxue said disapprovingly. Senior, we just need to wait and watch the show. Leng Ruoxue continued. Yes. The mother parasol tree nodded. Just as Leng Ruoxue had said, when the representatives of the top forces returned to their own lodgings and thought back on Leng Ruoxue's words, they could sense that Leng Ruoxue's intention was to get rid of Sun Tao. In order to replace the Leng family and the Luo family as a super family, they were willing to cooperate with Leng Ruoxue's idea. However, they thought that Leng Ruoxue's intention was most likely to earn money. Who would have thought that Leng Ruoxue's main reason was because she found it too troublesome and time-consuming to set up formations for their families? That was why she chose the method that she thought was the most convenient. In order for them to convince the various factions that had yet to sign a contract with her, Leng Ruoxue had racked her brains and put in a lot of effort. However, the results were not bad. At the very least, it was developing in the direction of the ending she had designed. Now, she just had to wait for those forces to take the initiative. It had to be said that the representatives of the top powers had the motivation to become a super family. They were extremely effective in their actions. In less than 2 days, they had managed to convince more than half of the powers to hire Leng Ruoxue. However, there were still a few representatives who were extremely stubborn. They would rather die than sign an employment contract with Leng Ruoxue. This fact made those few people particularly depressed. Seeing that things were developing in a good direction, some people refused to cooperate. Several representatives of the forces were so anxious that they were about to burst into flames. Unfortunately, no matter how they threatened and tempted, the other party refused to give in. What should he do now? The few of them gathered together and discussed for a long time. In the end, they decided that if it really didn't work, they could only. After gathering the stubborn representatives into a room in a certain inn, the young man among the representatives of the top forces spoke on behalf of them. Well, give you one last chance. Do you agree or not? I don't agree. We will never agree to it. What, do you want to silence me? You're all Leng Ruoxue's dogs. The middle-aged man, who once represented the forces that were expelled from the Leng clan's guest courtyard, shouted at the top of his voice. Help! Help me! Someone's trying to silence us. Then, the middle-aged man started to shout again. His voice was so miserable that it instantly attracted the attention of more than half of the customers in the inn. Thanks, the young man was very vexed, but before he could remedy the situation, the door of the guest room was knocked open, and a group of onlookers rushed in. What's going on? What's going on? The people who had barged into the room without permission asked all at once. Everyone, please don't misunderstand. We just have something to discuss with each other. The young man could only say. Don't listen to his nonsense. We have nothing to talk about. They want to kill us. They're trying to kill us. The middle-aged man saw that there were many onlookers and quickly asked for help. Silence. This is the cold, arrogant city of the Leng family. You guys are too bold. Quickly informed the Leng clan. Someone in the crowd shouted. Then, there was the sound of panicked footsteps. Guys, don't listen to their nonsense. We don't want to kill anyone. Seeing that the situation was out of control, the young man immediately said. One of you said that you wanted to silence us, and the other said that you didn't want to kill us. Who do you want us to believe? Seeing that the two sides had different statements, someone questioned. Of course they'll listen to us. We're the victims. The middle-aged man said anxiously. Why did you kill them? Their forces were destroyed by Sun Tao's men, and that's already pitiful enough. Someone asked the young man in confusion. Yup. That's right. Our forces have been destroyed, and now we're being bullied. Woo, they're forcing us to our deaths. Without giving the young man a chance to answer, the middle-aged man burst into tears. Seeing this scene, the young man and the others' faces darkened. This guy was really good at acting. Why didn't he look so sad when they talked about this? Why are they doing this to you? Someone in the crowd asked curiously. These few people are Leng Ruoxiu's dogs. They came to force us to agree to hire Leng Ruoxiu. We were unwilling, so they wanted to kill us. Sob. The Leng family is bullying us. Do they still want us to live? The middle-aged man howled as he spoke. His expression was so miserable that everyone present couldn't help but sympathize with him. Don't listen to their nonsense. We're only hoping that they'll agree to hire Senior Leng Ruoxiu for the safety of the entire Haotian continent. You should know that only those few clans have not agreed to hire her. If they agree to this, Senior Leng will definitely get rid of Sun Tao and the others for us. By then, we won't have to fear anyone and can go back to our previous lives. Isn't that good? The young man said loudly to the crowd. Most of the onlookers were the representatives of the major forces. Therefore, after hearing the young man's words, they felt that it made sense. Naturally, they did not feel sorry for the middle-aged man and his group. Seeing that he had saved some of his losses, the young man struck while the iron was hot. Now, just because they refused to hire Senior Leng, Sun Tao, and the others are still running amok in the Haotian continent, and our people don't dare to go out and walk around freely. Do you want to live like this forever? I don't. Someone in the crowd shouted. So, do you think they should agree to this? The young man pointed at the middle-aged man, but his words were directed at the onlookers. You guys agree. This isn't just a matter of your clans, it also concerns our clansmen. Someone saw that the young man's words made sense and tried to persuade the middle-aged man. Chapter 2636, This is Fake, 3, That's right. Your clansmen were all killed by Sun Tao. Don't you want to avenge your clansmen? Another young man chimed in. Whether we take revenge or not is our business, what does it have to do with you? The middle-aged man saw that the situation was a little one-sided, so he raised his head and said angrily. I did it for your own good. You really don't know what's good for you. The young man who had spoken before was a little angry when he saw his good intentions being treated like this. Don't tell me you really don't want to take revenge? A certain man looked at the middle-aged man with a suspicious look and asked. This is my family's business, it has nothing to do with you. The middle-aged man was so angry that his face turned green, and he continued to shout at the top of his lungs. Hee hee. Of course, it has nothing to do with us. At this moment, Leng Ruoxiu's smiling voice could be heard. The crowd at the entrance subconsciously made way for her. The moment the middle-aged man saw Leng Ruoxiu, his voice instantly raised by a few octaves. Leng Ruoxiu, you still dare to appear? Quickly take your dogs and leave this place, we don't need you to avenge our family. Then who do you want to help you? Or do you think that your clansmen are still alive? Leng Ruoxiu said with a smile. The middle-aged man was at a loss for words when he saw Leng Ruoxiu. After being questioned by Leng Ruoxiu, the courage he had when he shouted at her earlier had disappeared without a trace. Following that, Leng Ruoxiu's beautiful eyes turned to the other people on the middle-aged man's side. She smiled and asked, do you all have the same thoughts as him? We want to take revenge. The other people looked at each other and whispered. Hearing this, the middle-aged man turned his head and shouted at the few people, how could you betray me? Didn't we agree that we'll think of a solution together? There's no need for Leng Ruoxiu to interfere. But I'm afraid she's the only one on the Haotian continent who can help us. The few of them lowered their heads and did not dare to look at the middle-aged man. Back then, they had agreed that they would all follow the lead of the middle-aged man's faction. However, that was under the premise that their clan had not been destroyed by Sun Tao. Now that their clan was no longer around, if they still did not avenge their clan members, how could they face the clan members who had died? You're right. Other than me, no one else can help you. Leng Ruoxiu noticed that they were going against each other, so she made her presence known. Instantly, the middle-aged man's anger rose again. Who said she's the only one who can help you? Don't be fooled by her, she won't help you for free. This woman is very black-hearted. His anger caused the middle-aged man to forget his fear of Leng Ruoxiu once again. His face was red as he roared. From what you're saying, you want me to do good things for free? Leng Ruoxue replied calmly. Pfft. Someone in the crowd laughed. Then, there was another burst of laughter. In a world where the strong were respected, how could there be a strong person who would help others for free? Such a person could not be called a strong person, but a savior. Moreover, for cultivators, being too kind usually didn't make them live long. This was because wherever there were cultivators, it was full of fierce competition and cruelty. In such a world, only those with a heart like a rock and a firm will could go further and stand at the top of the many cultivators. Seeing that the middle-aged man did not speak, Leng Ruoxue took out a white memory crystal and threw it into the air. Following that, an image appeared on the memory crystal. It was a scene that people couldn't bear to look at directly. It was the news that had been spreading like wildfire. As the video was played, the faces of the middle-aged man and the people around him all turned pale. The broadcast of this video confirmed the authenticity of the news. Before the clip could finish, the few people beside the middle-aged man could not control their tears and knelt in front of Leng Ruoxue, begging her to take revenge for their family. At this moment, let alone giving up 50% of their assets, even if they were asked to give up all their assets, they would be willing to do so. Although they had heard the news before, they had been skeptical. Now, they no longer had any doubts. Instead, the thought of getting rid of Sun Tao and the others had become the most urgent thing in their hearts. When Leng Ruoxue heard their request, she immediately gave the young man a look. Following which, the young man took out a few contracts. The few of them did not even think and immediately signed on the contracts. In just a few minutes, except for the middle-aged man, everyone on his side had made their choice. In the end, Leng Ruoxue's beautiful eyes turned to the middle-aged man, waiting for him to make a decision. After a long time, the petrified middle-aged man finally had some reaction. He mumbled, "No. This was impossible. This is impossible." "Why is it impossible?" Leng Ruoxue asked with a smile. "Thanks, this is fake. This video is fake." The middle-aged man was jolted awake. He pointed at Leng Ruoxue and glared at her. "This isn't fake." Leng Ruoxue promised seriously. "Fake. It must be fake. Sun Tao would never kill my clansmen." The middle-aged man said with certainty. "Why not?" Leng Ruoxue was very curious. When everyone was asked this question by Leng Ruoxue, their curiosity was piqued. "It's impossible," the middle-aged man said firmly. "What you're saying doesn't make sense. Could it be that Sun Tao is your relative, so he can't kill your family members?" Leng Ruoxue guessed with a smile. "How could he be my relative? Don't spout nonsense." Hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, the middle-aged man was so frightened that his heart was in a mess, but he quickly denied it. "Weren't you the one who kept emphasizing that Sun Tao couldn't have killed your family? Then what was going on in the image? This was clearly done by Sun Tao's men. You can't possibly not recognize the clothes of Sun Tao and his men, right?" Leng Ruoxue said as she looked at the video that was still playing. "Of course I recognize their clothes, but the people in your image are definitely not them. They would never kill my clansmen." The middle-aged man was very certain. "They're the ones who did it," Leng Ruoxue said calmly. "No. It wasn't he. Sun Tao wouldn't do that. I've already submitted to them, so what reason do they have to send people to kill my clansmen?" In a moment of desperation, the middle-aged man retorted, but as soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly realized what he had just said and quickly changed his words. "I'm just talking nonsense, don't take it seriously." When everyone heard this, they looked at the middle-aged man in disdain. So what if this guy took them for fools? The words came from his own mouth, and he actually asked them not to take it seriously. If they didn't take it seriously, did they think he was joking? Wouldn't they be the silly ones if they did that? Now you know why he stopped you from hiring me, right? Leng Ruoxue ignored the middle-aged man who was filled with regret and frustration. Instead, she turned around and spoke to the other representatives who had been wearing the same pants as the middle-aged man. When the representatives heard this, they felt so regretful that their intestines turned green. They had thought that the middle-aged man was doing this for their own good. Only now did they realize that the other party was simply using them. This result infuriated them. In the next second, they all rushed toward the middle-aged man and started punching and kicking him. When Leng Ruoxue saw this, she immediately turned around and left. After returning to the snow garden, the mother parasol tree immediately came over and said, "Little girl, your wish has finally come true. Okay, next we should prepare to deal with Sun Tao." Leng Ruoxue smiled. By the way, did Sun Tao really exterminate all those forces? The mother parasol tree recalled this and asked curiously. "You'll have to ask him." Leng Ruoxue pointed at Leng Xiaoxiao, who was walking into the snow garden. The mother parasol tree then turned its beautiful eyes to Leng Xiaoxiao. Leng Xiaoxiao immediately felt the pressure increase. Being stared at by such a beautiful woman with anticipation, he did not feel a trace of joy in his heart. Instead, he felt a little scared. However, he did not dare to hide, so he could only brace himself and say, "Senior, is there anything you need to ask me?" "Yes, I want to know if the rumored forces are all gone." The mother parasol tree raised its head and asked Leng Xiaoxiao. Upon hearing this, Leng Xiaoxiao's forehead was instantly covered in cold sweat. He looked at Leng Ruoxue and saw that she did not have any intention of stopping him from speaking. He then told the mother parasol tree truthfully, "Other than the middle-aged man's faction, the others are still there." "So you're saying that you're lying to them?" The mother parasol tree looked at Leng Ruoxue and said. "This isn't lying. This is strategy." Leng Ruoxue said helplessly. "Actually, I think you're still doing something unnecessary. Why do you have to go through so much trouble? Those who aren't willing to hire you will be directly killed. Wouldn't that save more time and effort?" The mother parasol tree could not help but suggest. "Senior, I'm a kind-hearted person. Please don't teach the child the wrong things." Leng Ruoxue's forehead was filled with black lines when she heard this. Leng Xiaoxiao also felt that the mother parasol tree's words were a little. He was speechless about this. However, Leng Ruoxue's words were clearly despised by the mother parasol tree. The mother parasol tree rolled its eyes at her and said, "You're kind? Hee hee. I have no comment on your kindness." "All right." Leng Ruoxue admitted that she wasn't kind enough, but she was definitely not someone who liked to use violence. Basically, she felt that she was a peace-loving person, but the prerequisite was that no one offended her. Otherwise, she would immediately transform into a female T-Rex, and at that time, no one would be the one to suffer. Just as Leng Ruoxue was about to defend herself, a voice rang out in her heart, "Master, we're here." Chapter 2637, Who are they? 1. Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue revealed a faint smile. When the parasol tree mother saw this, it could not help but ask curiously, "What's the matter? Is there a good thing? Mei and the others are here." Leng Ruoxue smiled. "I see." The parasol tree nodded in understanding, but Leng Xiaoxiao was not sure who the Mei that Leng Ruoxue was referring to was. He asked curiously, "Who are Mei and the others?" "It's a few of my beastie and my subordinates from Wanshan City." Leng Ruoxue explained simply. Ever since she had arrived at the Azure Dragon Mountain and settled down there temporarily, she had sent a voice transmission to Mei and a few other small beasts, asking them to bring Big Mountain and his son to the Wanshan City to find the head butler, then bring them to the proud cold city. Now, they could finally meet up. Leng Ruoxue was looking forward to the arrival of Mei and the other small beasts and the people of Wanshan City. After not seeing him for so long, she realized that she missed those guys from Wanshan City. At the same time, she felt that she was really an irresponsible master. Ever since she took over Wanshan City, she seemed to have been a hands-off manager. However, in some ways, she did it for the good of the people of Wanshan City. After all, she had always thought that she was just a passerby in the Hautian continent. At that time, she had no intention of taking them away from here. But now everything was different, because she would take those people to the divine world. As the master, she naturally had to give them a stable living environment. After some thought, Leng Ruoxue raised her head and looked at Leng Xiaoxiao. She requested very politely, "Please arrange a place for my subordinates to stay. I think there will be a lot of them." "All right," he said. Leng Xiaoxiao nodded his head delightedly. Then, he resigned himself to his fate and went to work for Leng Ruoxue. Leng Ruoxue and the mother parasol tree were waiting for the Mei and the other little beasts to arrive. At this time, the succubus and the other beasts, as well as the people from Wanshan City, were already approaching the proud cold city. Looking at the city gate in front of him, Baby was excited. Sob. "I'm going to see my bad master. It missed its master so much." Originally, their master had left them for the Azure Dragon Mountain and said that they would be back soon. Who knew that this separation would last for several months? Moreover, they could not go directly to the Azure Dragon Mountain to meet their master. Instead, they went to the even further Wanshan City. One could imagine all the hardships they had to endure on the way. The abnormally excited Baby jumped down from the feather's back and ran straight for the city gate. The head butler of the Wanshan City, who was also sitting on the feather's back, couldn't stop him even if he shouted. The mimicked Baby turned into a stream of light and quickly ran towards the city gate. At the city gate, the petite Baby was still stopped by someone. The person who stopped it was none other than Leng Yichun, who was punished by the Leng family's grand elder, Leng Xiaoqing, to guard the city gate. Because Leng Yichun was punished, he was in a terrible mood. Hence, when he saw the little fox who wanted to enter the city without following the rules, the anger in his heart immediately rose. Thanks, what he was thinking was, it was fine if he was bullied by Leng Ruoxue, but now, even this little fox didn't care about him. He really couldn't tolerate this. With this thought, Leng Yichun immediately shouted at the little fox in front of him, "Where did this little bastard come from? Ao Han City isn't a place that any Tom, Dick, or Harry can enter." When Baby heard this, he squinted his eyes and said with a smile that was not a smile, "What did you just say? Do you have the guts to say that again?" "Humph. What's wrong with saying it again? Did you see that? This is the proud cold city, not a place that any Tom, Dick, or Harry can enter. Little bastard, get lost. Don't let me see you again." Leng Yichun's mouth twitched as he spoke arrogantly. "You bastard. You're the little beast. This grandpa isn't some random cat or dog, open your blind eyes and let this grandpa see clearly." Baby Fire roared. It was in a hurry to see its lovely master, and didn't have time to waste on irrelevant people. So the man in front of it didn't understand, which made it very angry. If it wasn't for the fact that this was the proud cold city, the territory of the Leng family, it would have attacked long ago. You dare to scold me?" Baby's words caused Leng Yichun's anger to rise by a few notches. He couldn't understand what was going on in this world. Why did everyone dare to bully him? In the past, although he could not be considered to be able to call the wind and summon the rain in the Leng family, he had a great reputation in the Leng family. But now? "I'm sorry, we're in a hurry to enter the city." At this moment, the head butler, who had arrived at the entrance of the city of Prideful Frost, picked up the Baby and looked at Leng Yichun apologetically. "This is your fox." Leng Yichun glanced at the head butler of the Wanshan City and thought to himself, "I've finally found the owner of this little fox. I guessed that this fox couldn't be without an owner." "No, it's my master S," the head butler of the Wanshan City said very honestly. Although he did not know the identity of the man who blocked the treasure, he could tell from his clothes that he was not an ordinary member of the Leng clan. Therefore, his words were quite polite, which could be considered as giving the Leng clan enough face. "Where's your master? Let him out. What kind of beast is he raising? You don't even know the rules." Leng Yichun shouted at the top of his voice. "My master is in the city." Baby didn't want to be outdone and roared back. Then, he turned his head and glared at the head butler of the Wanshan City. He was quite dissatisfied with his initiative to show weakness. From its point of view, there was no need for them to give the Ling family any face. Anyway, Master was not very satisfied with the Ling family. However, the head butler of Wanshan City did not dare to act willfully like his precious treasure. He felt that his master's surname was Leng, and no matter how thin the relationship between his master and the Leng family was, in the eyes of outsiders, his master was still a member of the Leng family. If he embarrassed the Leng family in public, wouldn't that be equivalent to slapping his master's face? Therefore, as long as the Leng family didn't go too far, he was still willing to give the Leng family some face. With this thought in mind, he very much hoped that the Leng family in front of him would be able to see the light, so that both sides would not have a bad expression. However, Leng Yichun had obviously been oppressed to the point of suffocation recently, so he could not understand the good intentions of the head butler of Wanshan City. He did not even ask for the other party's name and directly said to the head butler, "Even if your master is in the city, he has to come out." As soon as these words came out, the face of the head butler of Wanshan City immediately turned black. The faces of the people of Wanshan City behind him also turned ugly. Some of them were even rubbing their fists and rubbing their palms, looking eager to try. Although Leng Yichun was sometimes a little out of line and couldn't see the truth clearly, his intuition wasn't bad, so he immediately felt that the atmosphere was unusual. The strong smell of gunpowder made him subconsciously take a big step back, and after he stood in the middle of the guards, he then asked with a face of vigilance, "What do you want?" "This is the city of prideful frost. If you dare to cause trouble here, you'll regret it." It would have been better if he had not said those words. The moment he said those words, the people of Wanshan City became even angrier. The other party's words clearly showed that he wanted to use his power to bully others. Ever since Wanshan City had Leng Ruoxue as their backer, everyone in the Haotian continent had to look up to them. It had been a long time since they had received such treatment. Now, they had finally tasted the feeling of being despised again. Although it was not a fresh feeling, it was still rare. Chapter 2638, Who are they? 2. Everyone from the Wanshan City turned to look at their chief steward, using their eyes to ask him what to do, whether to make a move or not. Although the head butler was also very angry, he was more troubled. As the actual person in charge of the Wanshan City, he had too many factors to consider. In addition, his master was currently living in the Leng family. If they fought with the Leng family outside the city before they met his master, would his master blame them? Regret? You bastard! I'll let you know what regret is. Just as the head butler was thinking, Baby, who could not bear it any longer, was the first to attack. It did not care so much. Whoever made it unhappy, it would not let them off easily. Hence, its first target was Leng Yichun. The treasure's speed was too fast and Leng Yichun had no time to react before a claw mark appeared on his body. Seeing that he was injured, he did not even think and immediately ordered the guards, "Quickly catch this fox, I want to teach it a lesson." The guards obeyed and all stretched out their hands to grab the treasure. The people of Wanshan City saw this and naturally could not watch them bully their master's little beast. So, without even asking for the chief steward's opinion, they swarmed forward and surrounded the guards. In an instant, the scene became even more chaotic. The two sides were in a chaotic battle. Wanshan City had the absolute advantage in numbers. On top of that, there were also precious and other small beasts who took the opportunity to launch sneak attacks. Very quickly, the guards of the proud cold city were completely defeated. Leng Yichun's body was also covered in wounds. His face was blue and purple, and he looked extremely miserable. This scene happened in just a few minutes. By the time the head butler of Wanshan City reacted, the guards and Leng Yichun had already been surrounded and beaten into a miserable state. The chaotic battle ended without any suspense. They were so easily taken care of that all the guards felt ashamed. Although the other side had more people, it was a fact that they were too weak. Comparing the two sides, the other party was really too brutal. Woo! The guards' eyes were filled with tears as they looked pitifully at the baby who was sitting on Leng Yichun's body. Towards these people in front of them, they were already afraid. Where did this debt-collecting ghost come from? Could they be sent by the Sun family? With this thought in mind, a guard could not help but ask. When Baby heard this question, he crossed his legs and stretched out his little paws, shaking them gently. We're not from the Sun family. Then who are you? Why did you come to the proud cold city to cause trouble? The guard captain said with a face full of grief and indignation. Don't you think it's a little too late to ask who we are? Besides, we didn't come here to cause trouble. It was this guy who came to find trouble first. Baby pointed at Leng Yichun, who was already in a half-conscious state. Young Master Kun just didn't let you enter the city. The captain of the guards said in a low voice. Wrong. Not only did he not let me enter the city, he even called me an animal. I can't stand this. Baby said angrily. But you also beat us up. What else do you want? The expression on the captain's face became more and more sorrowful, but the situation was pressing, and he really didn't know what to do. He could only think of a way to stall for time. As for what happened at the city gate, he had just sent a message back to the Leng family. He believed that someone would come to solve it soon. Sob. Thanks, I don't want anything. I think someone from the Leng clan who has the final say will soon come. Baby said. When the captain of the guards heard this, he was shocked. He couldn't help but think to himself, how did this little fox know? Could it be that the other party could read minds? He let his imagination run wild. However, his baby really didn't know how to read minds. Otherwise, his baby would definitely tell him that if he beat the young, the old would come. If he beat the weak, the strong would come. Wasn't this the rule of most situations? It had already seen it many times. Not only that, but the captain's face also clearly said, we have a backer. And that backing would definitely arrive soon. Just like that, the Leng family's guards were scared witless. They looked at Baby and the others cautiously, afraid that they would feel that they had not had enough and would fight with them again. Baby, on the other hand, sat leisurely on Leng Yichun's back with her legs crossed. Her beautiful silver eyes were fixed on the direction of the city. A moment later, two figures rushed out of the city. The two men first looked at their guards, who had been beaten black and blue, and then turned their eyes to the little purple fox. Forefather, save me. Wu, Leng Yichun, who was in a semi-conscious state, saw Leng Xiaoqing's figure from the corner of his eyes and hurriedly called for help. However, Leng Xiaoqing ignored him and said to Bao Bei, you're a treasure. Not bad. It seems that you recognize me. Not like this guy with no vision. Baby pointed at Leng Yichun and said with a look of disdain. Ah. Leng Xiaoqing did not know how to respond to this. In fact, after he found out that Leng Ruoxu's beastie was coming to the proud cold city, he was afraid that it would cause more trouble, so he had specially asked Leng Ruoxue about it. He had originally planned to inform the city guards, but he did not expect them to arrive so quickly. Now, there was nothing to say, because his own guards had already been beaten up. AI. The situation in front of her made Leng Xiaoqing sigh in her heart. What she was afraid of really happened. He was clearly afraid that a conflict would occur between the two sides, but it still happened. Why couldn't anyone from both sides restrain themselves? However, he was even angrier at the people on his side. There were so many people on the other side, and they dared to start a conflict with the other side without asking clearly. How stupid was this behavior? Needless to say, the main culprit was definitely Leng Yichun, that idiot. At this moment, Leng Xiaoqing was filled with regret. Why did he have to punish Leng Yichun to guard the city gates? Miscalculated. It was definitely a mistake. He really regretted it so much that his intestines turned green. Moreover, the little beastie in front of him looked like an unforgiving master. How should he deal with the aftermath now? Leng Xiaoqing's head was starting to hurt from thinking about it. Unable to come up with any good ideas, he glanced at Leng Xiaoxiao beside him and gave him a look. Leng Xiaoxiao had no choice but to bite the bullet and said to Bao Bei with a smile, treasure, come with us to the Leng family's main residence. Your master is still waiting for you. She's been looking forward to your arrival. I'll definitely go. However, you have to first settle the matter at hand for me. Baby said with a face that left no room for discussion. Don't worry, we'll definitely give you an explanation. Leng Xiaoxiao guaranteed. However, he was thinking in his heart that at most, he could just hand Leng Yichun over to the other party. In any case, from the looks of it now, other than causing trouble, that guy really didn't have much contribution to the family. I want an explanation now. I don't blame him for not letting me enter the city. After all, I was anxious to see Master and didn't think so much before barging in. It's my fault. Baby first admitted his mistake with a good attitude, then changed the topic and said aggrievedly, but he shouldn't have called me an animal. So what if you humans are more noble than us beasts? Everyone was a cultivator, so they should be equal. More importantly, Master has never scolded us like this before, so what right does he have to do that?